Chapter 538. Damn it! Jiao Sero's eyes went red at this sight. As expected, anyone who had turned around to fight with the Tang soldiers was doomed. Fen Jie, lead the army in a quick retreat. I'll hold off the rear. Hurry! Roar! With a roar, Jiao Sero's body began to exude a milky white light as it rapidly swelled in size. In just a few moments, it had transformed into a massive white tiger that lunged behind it. There's no need to worry about Jiao Sero. If he dares to attack us, we'll deal with the Uzun cavalry behind him. In the pouring rain, Wang Chong's eyes were like torches as he sat on the back of the white-hoofed shadow, his gaze locked onto the distant Jiao Sero. The current Jiao Sero and Fen Jie were no longer as much of a threat as before, and the 20,000-some soldiers were of no threat to Wang Chong. If this guy is still here, then let him die here. The figure of the distant Jiao Sero was reflected in Wang Chong's eyes, and a thick killing intent flitted across his brow. That was then, and this was now. If Jiao Sero still dared to act so impudently, the combined strength of his father, Chen Shusun, the Eagle, Su Shiping Suanduan, and the other generals of the southwest would probably be enough to send Jiao Sero to his death. Wang Chong actually hoped that Jiao Sero would stay and engage in a slaughter. It would be best if he could charge into the army, or directly at Wang Chong to decapitate him. Alas, Jiao Sero still had a little rationality left. After pushing back the pursuit of 10 some Tang soldiers, and putting some distance between the two armies, Jia Siluo immediately turned and ran, not daring to delay for even a moment. Consider yourself lucky to run fast. Wang Chong coldly sneered, but he did not pursue. As long as an expert like Jiao Sero didn't make any mistakes, and was determined to escape, even Wang Chong couldn't do anything to him. All troops heed my command. Ignore them and attack with all your might. Finish this battle quickly, and eliminate those Uzun people. We don't have much time. Wang Chong said in a deep voice. This battle could be said to be the easiest one they had ever fought. Using 40 to 50,000 soldiers to deal with a few thousand Uzun troops, it was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. In just a few moments, all the Uzun who had disobeyed orders and had stayed behind to deal with the Tang out of anger had been cut down from their horses. As for the fleeing Fen Jie and Jiao Sero, whether they stayed or left, Wang Chong had already achieved his goal, so they were no longer important. There's not much time left. Pack your things and leave quickly. We need to move on to the next location. Wang Chong sat on his horse and looked down from above as he ordered everyone. Whoosh! A group of Tang Dynasty cavalry immediately dismounted, bent down, and began to sweep the battlefield with practiced movements. Everything and everyone went about their duties, everything carried out in an orderly fashion under Wang Chong's arrangements. In just a few moments, the battlefield had been swept clean. Wang Chong's troops swiftly departed, so fast that it seemed like this battle had never even taken place. Reporting. A scout from the front has reported that the Tang dynasty has been discovered. A large group of Tang people is suspected to be approaching. Reporting. Fen Jie and General Jiao Sero have sent a distress message. They've been attacked by the Tang army. In a few short moments, 2 scouts came galloping from 2 different directions to appear in front of Huashu Wuzong. What? Even though Huashu Wuzong had the cultivation of a great general, he couldn't help but raise his brow in shock upon receiving these 2 clearly conflicting reports. What's going on with being attacked by the Tang army? Don't they have 70 to 80,000 soldiers? And they're all cavalry, so how could they have been attacked? What sort of thing in the southwest can attack 70 to 80,000 cavalry on the plains? My lord, forgive me. This subordinate also does not know, but Fen Jie and General Jiao Sero truly have been attacked. The Uzun messenger tensed up and hurriedly kneeled down. My lord, should we send someone to take a look or send reinforcements? Fen Jie and Jiao Sero said that they were pursuing the Annan Protectorate, but this time, they appeared in the southwest. This is a completely different direction from the north. If nothing had happened, they would never have appeared in that direction. A rough, wild, and magnetic voice came from the side, next to Huashu Huaitsong. A muscular man wearing a bullhorned helmet and looking like a giant python with his bulging muscles spoke up. His eyes were sharp and his temples bulged. His body exuded a majestic aura that was even more powerful than Jiao Sero's. The only one who could accompany Huashu Wuzong so closely was the leader of the 5 tiger generals, Longqimba. It was rumored that Longqimba was an orphan of the plateau, who had been born by sensing draconic qi. But because of his strange birth, he was different from other infants, and was abandoned on the Great Snow Mountain Holy Land. Later on, he was adopted by a senior monk of the Great Snow Mountain Temple and raised. Longqimba had studied the profound martial arts of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Of the 5 tiger generals, Longqimba was probably the one who had learned the most and the most profound martial arts of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Boom! Splitting up was a major taboo, and before Huashu Huizong's side could make a decision, a massive boom came from the southeast of the mountain, accompanied by a cacophony of fighting and the clashing of swords and sabers. To everyone's surprise, both Huashu Huizong and Longqimba raised their heads and looked over. That place had no contact with the Annam Protectorate. Logically speaking, nothing should have happened there. The report from the southeast came much faster than expected. In just a few moments, a slightly plump Uzun man immediately galloped over. Landing on the ground, he hurriedly bowed. "My lord, there's news from the front. We've been attacked by a large group of Tang people." "What?" Huashu Wuzong's expression sank, his complexion instantly turning nasty. Another Tang army had appeared. Fenjie's and Jiasiluo's armies had been attacked, and now even the 100,000 soldiers under his command had been attacked. The torrential rain poured down, and for a few moments, Huashu Huizong had no idea how many enemies had come. There are so many soldiers there. How could they have been attacked by the Tang people? "Longqimba, immediately go and investigate." "Yes, my lord," Longqimba fiercely replied, leaping onto a large horse and galloping away. To the southeast a few moments ago. Rumble! A bolt of lightning flashed through the thunderclouds, its dazzling light bathing the earth in silver. In the silver light, one could clearly see a large group of Uzun cavalry lined up at the base of the mountain, prepared to charge to the summit. The air was somber. The earth rumbled, and at this moment, a dense rumbling could be heard from the distance. Through the curtain of rain and the weak light, one could faintly make out countless black silhouettes on large horses galloping in their direction. "Who goes there?" One of the commanding officers on the battlefield was alerted. He immediately turned his head and shouted into the distance. "We're on the same side. It was Crown Prince Fenjie and General Jiao Sero who sent us." After a few moments, a soft and somewhat indistinct voice came from the distance in Uzun. Hearing the familiar voice, the commander who was holding the line on the battlefield clearly lowered his vigilance. The people of the Tang dynasty held the Uzun in extreme contempt, and almost didn't speak the Uzun language. This much was certain. Crown Prince Fenjie? Weren't they sent by the great general to pursue the other Annam Protectorate? The commander said, inwardly flabbergasted. "Those people are too powerful. We've come under the orders of the 2 lords to call for reinforcements." The man lowered his voice intermittent, and his words were intermittent. Drip, drip, drip. The commander wanted to say something else, but those people had already passed through the curtain of rain. In the rain, the Uzun armor on their bodies could be clearly seen. "It really is one of our own. It seems that I've been overthinking things and being too vigilant." The commander breathed a long sigh of relief and let down his guard. But a moment later, just when he let down his guard and was at his most defenseless, there was a flash of cold light. The tip of a sharp spear rapidly expanded in front of his eyes. It was just one spear. Squelch! The spear pierced through his neck and protruded out the back, bringing with it a spray of blood. Such a fast spear. As this thought flashed through the commander's mind, his vision went black, and then he knew nothing else. Attack! A furious roar pierced through the dark clouds. Wang Chong raised his spear and tossed the corpse of the Uzun commander into the distance, instantly giving the order to attack. Kill! The next moment, more than 4,000 Uzun people roared and suddenly launched an attack, pouncing on the surrounding Uzun people. Squelch! 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 The sound of sharp blades piercing through flesh came from all around. Many people were pierced by the spear before they could even react. falling off their horses. Damn it, the Tang people. They're not our people at all. Watch out. Kill them. That the group of Uzun people was shocked and angry. They shouted and charged at the Uzun army that appeared later. But for those who missed the scene of Wang Chong's attack, they could not tell what was going on at all. What's going on? Why are our people fighting each other? What's going on? They're not our people. Are they the Tang people? Which one is the Tang people? That amidst the screams, the army instantly panicked. The focus of the army was on Xinyu Zhongtong and the Annan generals on the mountain. Except for a few people, no one knew what was going on. It would be fine if it was a normal battlefield. But the gray rainstorm affected many people's vision. Except for the people nearby, most of the Uzun soldiers in the distance could only see two groups of people killing each other. They could not tell who was who. Don't stop. Disperse them. Wang Chong ordered again. There were far more Uzun people around than the Tang army. But as long as they did not stop and stay in one place, it was impossible for the Uzun people to distinguish the Uzun people from the Central Plains. This result was precisely caused by Wang Chong. Clang, clang, clang. Chapter 539. There was a clear difference in height between the Central Plainsmen and the Uzun, so it was not easy to confuse them. However, Wang Chong had long given the order for everyone to lie low on the backs of their horses. Because of this, the Uzun could not tell the difference between the Central Plainsmen and the Uzun at first glance. Damn it! Damn it! Where is the enemy? Ah! Before he could finish speaking, the Uzun man was pierced by a spear. His body trembled a few times, and he fell from his horse. 4,000 men had killed more than 2,000 Uzun men, and thrown the army of more than 20,000 into chaos. If it were not for the fact that Wang Chong's goal was not just to kill the enemy, this number would have been much higher. Go! Wang Chong did not continue fighting. His 4,000 men had almost drilled through the Uzun army in the southeast. Then, he reined in his horse and galloped away. Don't continue fighting. Everyone follow me. Mud splashed high into the air in the rain. The war horses galloped away quickly. Before anyone could react, they had already galloped away. After them. When the Uzun saw this, they were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. The Uzun army of more than 100,000 men was actually ignored by 4,000 men. When had the fierce Uzun ever been humiliated like this? Follow me. Kill them. In the rain, an Uzun general's eyes turned red. He swung the Uzun machete in his hand, pulled the reins, and shot into the rain like a bolt of lightning. Behind him, a group of enraged Uzun cavalry roared and charged out. The two armies, one in front and one behind, quickly disappeared into the rain. Hurry! In the gray curtain of rain, Wang Chong spurred his horse forward, urging the army. Curses could be heard from behind him, and Wang Chong could sense that there were at least thousands of Uzun men rushing towards him. Sir, they've taken the bait. The familiar voice of the eagle came from beside him. He was also riding on a highland steed, galloping wildly. With the eagle's physique, the Uzun's armor was obviously not suitable for him. Wang Chong had to kill a tall Uzun general in order to barely make a set of armor. Can you tell how many people there are? Wang Chong asked. The eagle did not speak. He looked up at the sky. The bean-sized raindrops splashed on his face, but the eagle's eyes were fixed on the giant eagle circling above his head. About 6,000 or 7,000, the eagle pondered for a moment before replying. Beasts did not have the intelligence to count people one by one. But the eagle had already trained this giant eagle through various methods to determine the number of people, and use flying diagrams to represent the number. It seems these Uzun people don't really think highly of us. Wang Chong sneered. Although they managed to kill almost half of the Uzun's men in a single charge, the Uzun people obviously did not think that it was because of their own combat strength, but because of the surprise attack. That's right, sir. The eagle's eyes were still staring at the sky, but this time, it was not the giant eagle he raised, but a green sea eagle that had appeared out of nowhere. This green sea eagle was originally an Uzun ferocious bird, used to control the sky. The eagle had tamed it, and used it for other purposes. When it came to training eagles, the Uzun people were still at the elementary level, so they were far behind the eagles. Although they didn't have much time, The eagle couldn't train the Uzin's eagle to the level of his giant eagle. However, it wasn't a problem to teach it some simple questions. Huashu Wuzong's side has moved out. Although I can't tell if Huashu Wuzong's side has moved out or not, I'm sure there's a commotion there. The eagle's voice was so solemn. The biggest advantage of using the temporary training of the Green Sea Eagle was that it could deceive the Uzin's people, making them relax their vigilance, making them unable to distinguish whether it was their own people or the others. In fact, it was theirs anyway. It's such a big commotion. It would be strange if Huashu Wuzong didn't have any reaction. However, Xinyu Zhongtong and the other people of the Annam Protectorate are holding them back on the summit. He can't possibly have the time to deal with us. There's an 80 to 90% chance that he's sent out the other 5 tiger generals. There's no need to go there for now. Wang Chong's eyes flashed. Although he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he had a pretty good idea of what was going on in the Uzin army. There's no need to care about them. Let's go and take those fellows behind us to our destination. After saying this, Wang Chong's legs tightened as he charged forward. Rumble! Don't let them get away! The war horses rumbled. Tens of thousands of enraged Uzin soldiers turned into a black flood of steel as they charged forward, their speed reaching the limit. 1,000 zhang, 500 zhang, 300 zhang, 100 zhang. As they got closer and closer, the soldiers stared at the Tang army in front of them. No one noticed that more and more hills were appearing around them, and that they were getting farther and farther away from the army behind them. Boom! Just when they were less than 60 zhang away, something strange happened. Roar! Just a few feet away from them, in a dark area that everyone mistook for mud, the sound of splashing water could be heard. An axeman roared as he suddenly leapt out of the ground. Clang! A cold light flashed, and with just a swing of the axe, a huge horse's head was chopped off from its neck. Nay! The war horses neighed in fear. The sudden change had thrown the Uzin cavalry into a panic. With the war horses killed, the Uzin cavalry were thrown far away, crashing into the ground and stirring up large amounts of mud. Plus plus blush. 1 2 3 4. In the darkness, spearmen, axemen, and shield-bearers leapt out one after another from the originally ordinary hilly terrain. They stabbed with their spears, hacked with their axes, and slammed with their shields. Even more people leapt out, pouncing straight at the cavalry on horseback. At such a close distance, not even the Uzin could dodge in time. Bang bang bang. One Uzin soldier after another was thrown off their horses. In the gloom, tens of thousands of Tang dynasty soldiers leaped out from the sides. Ah! Careful! There's an ambush! We've been fooled! Run! Screams in Uzin language echoed through the air, faces contorted in fear. They had been so focused on exterminating the 4,000 to 5,000 Tang soldiers that they had never imagined that so many Tang dynasty infantry would be lying in ambush at such a close distance. The Annam Protectorate! It's the other Annam Protectorate! Panicked and fearful cries resounded through the air as someone finally reacted. It was no secret that the 2 armies of the Annam Protectorate had been separated in the rain. Fenjie and Jiao Sero had gone to pursue them, and the messenger had long ago sent the news. Logically speaking, the other army of the Annam Protectorate should have traveled very far through the storm. No one had expected them to appear here at a time like this. Run! The morale of the 6,000 to 7,000 Uzin soldiers had completely crumbled. Many people wanted to run, but it was too late. In the neigh, the earth rumbled and war horses neighed. Wang Chong had already led the more than 4,000 Annam Protectorate cavalry in a counterattack. Swoosh! Wherever the spear passed, men and horses would be thrown off their feet. In this battle, Wang Chong was no longer watching from the sidelines, but personally participating in the battle. As Uzin soldier fell, pure blood energy flowed into Wang Chong's body. In this torrential rain, Wang Chong's stellar energy not only did not decrease, it only grew stronger. Leaping dragon spear. He was like a flood dragon soaring into the night sky, splashing through the torrential rain. Then with a roll, he moved as fast as a bolt of lightning, and thrust his spear into the body of a Tibetan officer 20 zhang away, caught off guard. With Wang Chong's Tier 9 true martial realm strength, and the leaping dragon spear. No martial artist under the profound martial realm was a match for him. This Uzun commander's body swayed for a moment before he collapsed from his horse, his eyes wide open. In a proper battle, he would not be defeated so easily. But in a crowded and cruel battlefield, the strength of an individual was greatly reduced. With a single spear strike, he was knocked off his horse by Wang Chong. Congratulations, host. For killing 5 foreign generals, you have unlocked the general halo. You are the enemy of all generals, regardless of whether they are from the Central Plains or the foreign countries. As long as they are your enemies, they will be weakened by the halo. Scope of effect: all generals. This halo is the upgraded version of the halo, breaking the restriction that the bane of the battlefield halo can only be used on soldiers below the rank of general. Attention! Host has only unlocked the general halo. To officially unlock the halo, you will need to complete the next mission. All of a sudden, a series of voices poured down from Wang Chong's mind like a waterfall. Like a bolt of lightning, Wang Chong was just about to knock over an Uzun cavalry when he sensed this change and was stunned. General Halo? What's going on? Could it be that the bane of the battlefield halo is not a general halo? Wang Chong grasped the spear in his hand and maintained his thrusting motion. For a moment he was stunned. The might of the halo was completely overwhelming on the battlefield. Wang Chong had always thought that this was the strength of a general. But now it seemed that this was not the case. The Stone of Destiny, what's with the general halo? Chapter 540. The Martial General Halo, as its name suggests, is only targeted at martial general level experts. It can be superimposed with the bane of the battlefield halo. The Stone of Destiny's voice resounded in his mind. Does the Martial General Halo have any other halos besides the 10,000 Generals Halo? Or does the Martial General Halo refer to the 10,000 Generals Halo? Wang Chong frowned as he spoke. The Martial General Halo isn't just the 10,000 Generals Halo. There are other types that are specifically targeted. There are other types of halo, such as the Arabian Halo or the Carix Spazinu Halo, but the user has to obtain them himself. The voice added, the Arabian Halo. Wang Chong's brow twitched at this name, countless thoughts flitting through his mind. Wang Chong felt like he had grasped something, but when he thought about it carefully, he realized that he had grasped nothing at all. May I ask how one can officially activate the Bane of Generals Halo? Wang Chong sternly asked. The power of the Bane of the battlefield was immense, and it was practically a heaven-defying existence on the battlefield. However, its flaws were also very obvious. That was, it couldn't be used against generals. Thus, whether it was Bashishing, Batunlu, Fenjie, or any other top-class expert, Wang Chong's halo was completely useless against them. But if it was the Bane of Generals Halo, then everything would be different. Although the Trial of Destiny had temporarily stopped Wang Chong from obtaining Destiny Energy, and any other methods of obtaining strength from Destiny Energy, his other methods were still unaffected. If he could activate the Martial General Halo, it would be of enormous assistance to this battle. The requirements for the Bane of Generals Halo are, first, to kill 10 foreign generals. Second, to kill a profound martial realm expert in battle. Third, to reach the 3rd level of the Bane of the battlefield Halo. Only when all 3 of these conditions are fulfilled can the Bane of Generals Halo be officially activated. Buzz! Wang Chong's heart sank at these 3 conditions. The first condition was a little better, but neither of the other 2 were easy. The upgrade of the Bane of the battlefield Halo was exponential. In the last battle, Wang Chong had commanded the Annam Protectorate to defeat the 50,000-strong army commanded by Fenjie and Jiao Sero. However, Wang Chong's Bane of the battlefield had yet to reach the 3rd level. Wang Chong felt that he was not far from advancing to level 3. However, as for how far away he was, even Wang Chong had no idea. Even so, he still needed to kill a profound realm expert. The Stone of Fate's condition clearly stated that it had to be done in battle. In other words, the condition required Wang Chong to kill a profound realm expert by himself. It was not that Wang Chong had never killed a profound martial realm expert before. But most of the time, Wang Chong had used the little Inyang sword to absorb the last bit of stellar energy in the opponent's body when the opponent had lost the ability to resist. This condition was clearly different from the one mentioned in the Stone of Fate. There's plenty of time in the future. If I use this battle well, I can definitely achieve the condition to activate the General Halo. Wang Chong quickly calmed down. The Stone of Fate's condition was absolutely impossible to achieve under normal circumstances. However, in this large-scale battle that involved 3 great empires, anything was possible. If he succeeded, the General Halo might become the key to changing the course of this battle. Get ready and leave quickly. Uzun might sense something amiss at any moment. We need to move on to the next battle as soon as possible. Wang Chong came to his senses and waved his hand. In the torrential rain, the fighting had already become sporadic. For this ambush against Wang Chong, he had prepared at least 20,000 men, with 20,000 Annam Protectorate elites and 4,000 to 5,000 cavalry. Dealing with 6,000 Uzun cavalry was truly too easy. The battle ended much faster than expected. Under Wang Chong's command, thousands of Annam Protectorate soldiers quickly stripped the Uzun cavalry of their armor. The Highland steeds were excellent war horses and could be used by other infantrymen. With the Uzun armor and Highland steeds, Wang Chong's Uzun cavalry quickly increased from 4,000 to 8,000. Enough! Wang Chong looked at these Uzun people, who were full of vigor but obviously did not look like Highlanders. He nodded to himself. The art of war emphasized timing, geography, and people. Under normal circumstances, Wang Chong's tactics would be difficult to execute, but this torrential rain made everything possible. As long as they lowered their bodies while riding, it would be a perfect disguise. The biggest flaw was the language. If they did not know the Uzun language, they would be easily seen through. Fortunately, Wang Chong could solve this problem himself. It was impossible to master the Uzun language in a short period of time. However, he could pick a few clever ones and teach them a few simple sentences. It would be easy for them to deal with the Uzun language when they were being interrogated. Time is of the essence. Let's go. Wang Chong picked a few clever leaders and divided them into 2 groups. Then they quickly set off. Rumble! Amidst the dense sounds of hooves, the Annam Protectorate quickly split into 2 groups. One of the 2 groups headed south, while the other headed north. In just a short while, they disappeared into the rain. The whole process was as smooth as flowing water. It was as if they had never appeared. Dee-da-da. In the torrential rain, the sound of hooves could be heard. Shadows were approaching from afar. Who's there? At the foot of the mountain, an Uzun corporal quickly left the group. He turned around and rode his horse forward, shouting, "It's us!" Those Tang people didn't catch up. They ran too fast. Damn it! The leading Uzun general said. He hammered the air with a look of resentment and helplessness. They ran away? The Uzun corporal furrowed his brows. He seemed to be a little unwilling to admit defeat. But isn't your base over there? Why did you run over here? Ah, wrong. The leading Uzun general seemed to be taken aback. Only then did he realize that he was lost on his way back. He lowered his head and mumbled something. What did you say? The Uzun corporal walked over and asked. I said Gula. The Uzun general's voice was a little unclear. What did you say? I said we. The sound of the wind and rain was too loud. The Uzun general's voice was getting more and more indistinct. The Tibetan commander's brow furrowed into a deep crease. Without another word, he urged his horse forward to meet the enemy. At this moment, no one noticed that the Uzun general sneered in his heart. A mocking smile flashed across his eyes. His knowledge of the Uzun language was limited. He only knew what Wang Chong taught him. Of course, he could only mumble the rest. However, it was enough to close the distance. Brothers, charge! With a loud shout, the Uzun general finally stopped pretending. He raised his right hand above his head, and with a roar, he gave the order to attack. Rumble! The earth shook. Upon hearing the order, the morale of the Uzun army was low. All of a sudden, they raised their heads, and an astonishing aura exploded from their bodies. Kill! The war horses galloped, and the rain splashed. Thousands of Annam Protectorate soldiers instantly launched an attack on the unprepared Uzun army. At the same time, somewhere else. Who is it? We're here to support the Northwest under the general's order. Under the thunderclouds, an Uzun man rode a tall horse and raised a flagpole high. He led thousands of cavalrymen through the rain. Boom! The next moment, under the shocked gazes of countless people, the thousands of cavalrymen charged into the army, southeast, southwest, northeast. Almost all of these places were attacked by their own people. These people came and went like ghosts, and all of them were wearing Uzun armor. It was impossible to tell whether they were from the Tang dynasty or from the Uzun. Moreover, these people appeared for all kinds of strange reasons when they were in disguise, making it impossible to guard against them. At the same time, their fighting style was also fast. Most of the time, before people from other places could arrive, they had already retreated. In the extreme chaos, there were even cases of Uzun people attacking Uzun people. The most direct result of the continuous chaos was that the people were panicking. They were like birds startled by the mere twang of a bow, causing the military order to be ineffective. This was because no one knew whether the people who passed the military order were from their own people or the Tang people. Damn it! How many Tang people are here? How can we defend against them? They're even wearing our armor. We can't see them at all in the heavy rain. Moreover, it's getting darker. It's even harder to tell them apart. That the Tibetan officers clenched their fists, their minds filled with irritation. If it was any other time, the Annam Protectorate would be courting death if they dared to do this. But now, the operation to encircle Xinyu Zhongtong's troops on the mountaintop was underway. Now that they were being attacked from both front and back, it was impossible for them to split their forces to search for the enemy. Moreover, there was an objective fact that could not be ignored. Although it was still dawn when the army set out, the pursuit, loss, and entanglement of the army had caused it to be almost evening by now. Even if the thunderclouds in the sky had dispersed, this was not a good time to search. More importantly, even though there had been so many Tang army raids, the Uzun people could not tell how many people had come. At the beginning, the Uzun people had thought that there was only one group. Although they were being attacked from all directions, they thought that the enemy was just deliberately mystifying things. But later on, this was not the case at all, because at most at least 3 directions were being attacked on a large scale at the same time. Moreover, these people would come and go as they pleased. Now, even the fierce generals of the Uzun and Gari royal lineage could not tell how many people the enemy had hidden in the darkness, let alone the soldiers at the bottom. Just what are these Uzun people doing? At the same time, on the summit of the mountain, a fully armed southwestern general with a knife scar on his left eyebrow and an aura as heavy as a mountain stood on his 2 legs and looked down at the mountain, his brows deeply furrowed. Are they deliberately mystifying things to lure us in? A tall and thin southwestern general said. His armor was stained with blood and covered in knife scars. It was clear that he had experienced countless fierce battles. In the southwest, these old generals were all fierce and valiant generals. No, the southwestern general with the knife scar on his left eyebrow shook his head and said meaningfully. Chapter 541. But right now, who in the southwest will help us? Could it be the Wang clan father and son? But haven't they already fled far away? Will they come back to help us now? The tall and thin general's brow grew even more confused, and he subconsciously turned to Protector General Xinyu Zhongtong. Xinyu Zhongtong had been personally chosen by the previous Protector General, Zhangqiu Jinxiong. If not for this incident, even if his seniority wasn't enough to convince the masses, even if they had any objections, no one would have dared to say anything for the sake of Zhangqiu Jinxiong. But now, everyone knew that the Annam Protectorate was at odds with itself on the outside, and that it was fraught with internal crisis. Otherwise, a significant number of Annam Protectorate soldiers wouldn't have left with the Wang clan father and son. But even so, there were still many supporters of Xinyu Zhongtong in the Protectorate who were willing to follow Zhangqiu Jinxiong's arrangements. Victory and defeat are commonplace in a soldier, and losing a battle was not the fault of a soldier. In the view of some generals, the 300,000 Mengshi Zhao soldiers, including even the Uzun soldiers, were not something that the Annam Protectorate could deal with. The Mengshi Zhao, Yusang army had never appeared in the southwest before. Not even Protector General Zhangqiu Jinxiong would be able to do anything about it. I don't know. Xin Yuzhongtong looked down the mountain in silence for a long time. He truly did have complex feelings for the Wang clan father and son, but they were far from hate. On the contrary, he felt a few emotions. If not for that youngest son of the Wang clan establishing Lion City, if not for the timely arrival of the Wang clan father and son to boost morale, the Southwest Army would have been completely wiped out. Xin Yuzhongtong had always understood that his talent and knowledge of the art of war were more than enough to be a general, but he was far from being an influential protector general whose words could shake the world. But all of this was Lord Zhangqiu Jinxiong's will, and even Xin Yuzhongtong could only submit. But no matter what, the Annan Protectorate Army had been reduced to its current state, and he had to take responsibility for it. Even though I don't know what's going on, there's one thing I can be sure of. The person leading the troops down the mountain is definitely not the Wang father and son. Xin Yuzhongtong took a deep breath and quickly came back to his senses. Although the generals were not convinced by him on the surface, as the commander-in-chief of the army, his top priority was to find a way to lead them out of the predicament they were in. Wang Yan's style is upright and strict. With his personality, it's impossible for him to use such a sneak attack. As for Wang Fu, although his resourcefulness far surpasses his father's, and I'm not his match, I'm afraid, he still can't do all of this. After following the Lord Protector General for so many years, Xin Yuzhongtong's strength might not have reached that level, but his vision was still there. But if it's not the Wang father and son, who else could it be? The southwestern general with the scar on his left eyebrow couldn't help but ask in surprise. Of all the outstanding generals in the southwest, only the Wang father and son could reach Xin Yuzhongtong's level in the art of war and strategy. But if even they weren't the Wang father and son, then who was commanding the army to attack Uzin's men? The southwestern general with the scar on his left eyebrow was momentarily stunned. This answer had truly surpassed his expectations. Could it be that some other formidable character has appeared in the southwest? Could it be Li Jingyi? But didn't he die in battle a long time ago? The southwestern general with the scar on his left eyebrow was in turmoil. There's no need to think too much about it. No matter what his background is, there's one thing we can be sure of. He's a friend, not a foe. Pass on my order. Do everything in your power to hold them down. A sharp light flashed in Xin Yuzhongtong's eyes as he raised his right arm and immediately issued the order. And with Xin Yuzhongtong's order, the entire army rumbled to life. Although aggressive assaults in the open were not Xin Yuzhongtong's forte, in terms of infantry defense, Xin Yuzhongtong was an absolute valiant general. Thus, even though he was facing an enemy that was twice his size, Huashu Wuzong was still unable to easily defeat his troops. Kaiyil. The heaven-shaking war drums and shouts resounded through the clouds as the army once more plunged into a fierce battle. My lord, the southwest is under attack again. They're pretending to be our men. We've suffered heavy losses. If this continues, we'll collapse on our own. My lord, the southeast is also under attack. At the base of the mountain, Huashu Wuzong was seated atop a highland steed that was taller than a man. Around him, one herald after another came out one after another. At first, Huashu Wuzong didn't care about this itch. If a war could be won by such a chaotic method, then there would be no need to fight it. Everyone could just use such a method. To Huashu Wuzong, who had an army of 100,000 and commanded more than 200,000 elites from the Ngari royal lineage, the enemy's method was just child's play. To be more precise, they were digging their own graves. But what happened next was completely wrong. Southeast, southwest, northwest. Every direction was under attack, and the army's rhythm of attack was completely disrupted. At the base of the mountain, the army in all four directions was in chaos. They couldn't even command them to attack. Even someone of Huashu Huaitsong's worldview found it inconceivable that a force of only a few thousand could cause such a disturbance to his army of 100,000. Since when did such a powerful figure appear in the Annan Protectorate? Huashu Huaitsong's eyes glowed with a cold light that seemed almost tangible. From the start of this assault until now, Huashu Wuzong had finally realized that he had made a mistake. The enemy commander had displayed superb mastery of the art of war, an ability that no general could compare to. To be more precise, Huashu Wuzong had never seen anyone capable of such a level of harassment. "My lord, what do we do? Should your subordinate send a group of soldiers to deal with them?" A familiar voice rang out in Longkimba's ear. As he listened to the chaos coming from all around him, he was infuriated by these assaults. This sort of harassment wasn't anything formidable. Logically speaking, if he caught them once, they would all be wiped out. But for some reason, he hadn't been able to catch them even once. He had even changed his position several times, but he still hadn't been able to catch a single one of them. Longkimba couldn't even tell if his luck was terrible to the extreme, or if there was some other reason. "There's no need." Huashu Wuzong waved his hand. "A large-scale mobilization won't be able to hide from the enemy's eyes and ears, and it will also scatter our forces. Most importantly, you've already been targeted. It's useless no matter where you go." With these last words, Huashu Huizong looked at his trusted general with a profound look in his eyes. The agitated Longkimba was instantly dumbfounded. "Humph. Do you really think that it's just bad luck that you haven't been able to meet them?" Huashu Huizong coldly snorted and indifferently said. He had never believed in coincidences. He only believed in his own eyes. Longkimba had definitely been targeted. But how is this possible? Longkimba said in shock. There were 100,000 Uzun warriors here. And with so many of them densely packed together, how could the enemy possibly determine his position? In truth, given the enemy's position, not even Longkimba could keep track of him at all times. In fact, this was something that was simply impossible to achieve. This answer was so shocking that it didn't even matter if Longkimba could capture the enemy and deal them a vicious blow. "There's nothing in this world that's impossible," Huashu Wuzong indifferently said, paying no attention to Longkimba. He slowly raised his chin and pretended to look up at the sky. Longkimba was left in a daze. "Wait. It's not impossible." Suddenly, a thought flashed through Longkimba's mind. His entire body trembled as he followed Huashu Wuzong's gaze and looked up at the sky. Above his head, dark clouds hung low. Bolts of lightning shuttled through the clouds, followed by a dense torrential rain, which slammed into his face one by one. But he couldn't see anything behind the dark clouds. No, there must be something. Longkimba clenched his fists, an indescribable feeling in his heart. Although he couldn't see anything, he was sure that there was something behind the dark clouds. "It seems like your reaction isn't slow," Huashu Wuzong indifferently said, his voice much calmer than before. Although he was a little slow, Longkimba had still managed to react. In this torrential rain and surrounded by an army of 100,000, it was almost impossible to accurately lock onto the movements of a single person. But just because it was impossible didn't mean it was impossible. At the very least, Longkimba had no secrets to speak of from the sky. "The enemy has probably determined that I'm the commander-in-chief and have to oversee the central army. The only people I can send out are you lot. Bashishing is currently at the pass, and Jiao Sero and Mengshi Zhao are together. There are only a few people left, and you're the strongest of the 5 tiger generals. They only need to keep an eye on you." Huashu Wuzong's eyes were like torches, as if he had long ago seen through the truth. If Wang Chong were here and heard these words, he would assuredly be stunned, because this was truly the truth. Huashu Wuzong was said to be in existence on par with Zhangqiu Jinxiong in the southwest, and it now appeared that this was indeed the case. He could not be underestimated. "Longkimba, go to the southeast again and draw them away. As for me, this farce has gone on for so long, it's time for me to go out." With a wave of his hand, Huashu Wuzong urged his horse forward, riding off to the southwest with his several dozen personal guards. "No matter who you are, as long as you want to continue this game, you'll definitely come. I'll be waiting for you." On his horse, Huashu Wuzong's eyes were closed, his expression callous, his mind in turmoil. Although he had been overseeing the central army this entire time, he had not come away empty-handed. The attacks of the Tang people seemed chaotic and without any pattern, but Huashu Wuzong had long ago found the tiniest clues. If his guess was right, their next attack would be in the southwest. No matter who they were this time, he would wipe them all out. Chapter 542. Young Master, where should we attack next? In the depths of the rain and wind, Wang Chong and the eagle had gathered together, leading several soaked armies. Wang Chong's strategy was already showing its effects. The army at the base of the mountain was in chaos, making it impossible for them to focus on attacking the Annam Protectorate. In all his years as an official, this was the first time the eagle had fought to his heart's content. He felt like he was dancing on the edge of a blade. He was facing more than 100,000 Uzun cavalry, and the slightest mistake could result in his death. But under Wang Chong's arrangements, each attack was more daunting than dangerous. Not only was it more daunting than dangerous, it was also playing around with the Uzun army, throwing them into chaos. This was completely different from the eagle's understanding of the cruelty and cold-bloodedness of the battlefield, where one could die at any moment. For a moment, the eagle was forced to admit that he was a little infatuated with this feeling. We can't attack anymore. To his surprise, Wang Chong completely rejected the eagle's idea. Don't forget that the Uzun still have Wuxia Wuzong. Part of the reason we were able to succeed so early on was because of our proper planning, but the other part was that Wuxia Wuzong underestimated us. We could forget about it before, but now that things have developed to this point, if Wuxia Wuzong still doesn't come out, then he really is a great general. The eagle was dumbfounded. The feeling of toying with a Tibetan army of more than 100,000, of toying with a powerful foe in the palm of one's hand, was so intoxicating that it made one forget for a moment that the Tibetan army had not moved. As Uzun great general, Wuxia Wuzong had been overseeing the center of the army and had not moved at all. A chill poured down from the top of the head, and the eagle's entire body went cold as he came to his senses. Imperial great generals played a decisive role. Their individual strength might not be enough to overturn a battle, but they were more than capable of changing the outcome. Based on everyone's current condition, it would be fine if they didn't encounter Wuxia Wuzong. But if they did encounter him, 4,000 to 5,000 men would be insignificant to someone of that level. At the very least, it would be a piece of cake for him to heavily injure them. Being lucky for a while doesn't mean you'll be lucky forever. After playing for so long, it's time to stop. Wang Chong glanced at the eagle and paused. And don't forget what our goal is. You are right, young master. I was careless. Wang. The eagle's entire body turned cold, and he broke out in a cold sweat. He immediately came to his senses. That's right. From the very beginning, Wang Chong had made it very clear that the purpose of this operation was to create a diversion and constantly harass the enemy. Their goal was not simply to kill the enemy. With just their army, it was impossible for them to defeat Wuxia Wuzong's army head-on. Their goal was only to restrain him. But this was not their ultimate goal. My lord, what should we do next? The eagle sternly said. After harassing them for so long, it's time for us to take action. Pass on my order. Have them move out. In addition, send a message to Protector General Xinyu on the summit. Without their cooperation, we won't be able to do this. Wang Chong's gaze pierced through the air toward the distant mountain peak. The Central Plains Tang dynasty and Uzun would have a decisive battle, but not today, not now. The urgent task at hand was to bring out Xinyu Zhongtong and the tens of thousands of Annam Protector General under his command. This was the ultimate goal of this operation. Yes, young master, the eagle sternly said, his expression extremely respectful. After pausing for a moment, he thought of something and said, Then, young master, I'll summon the others back. No. Wang Chong shook his head, his profound eyes gazing up at the thick thunderclouds, an astonishing light in them. The operation must continue. If we don't continue, how can we succeed? The eagle blankly stared at Wang Chong, unable to understand what he was thinking. Wang Chong had clearly rejected his suggestion, but now, he was saying that the operation must continue. This completely different decision left the eagle in a daze, unable to grasp what Wang Chong was thinking. Wang Chong sensed the eagle's thoughts, but he only smiled and did not explain. Slowly turning his head, Wang Chong peered through the darkness to the southwest of the mountain range. Wuxia Wuzong, if I'm not mistaken, you should be there right now, right? With your intelligence, there's no way you wouldn't have noticed. But alas, A brilliant light flashed through Wang Chang's eyes, but he stopped thinking about it. In this world, Huashu Wuzong was definitely one of the most supreme existences. Whether it was in intelligence or martial prowess, an imperial great general was not someone that ordinary generals could compare to. An ordinary opponent really wouldn't be a match for Huashu Wuzong. Alas, Huashu Wuzong's opponent was Wang Chong. Not even this great general of the Uzan Empire could have imagined that his opponent would be the war saint who would reign supreme over the world. I didn't think that we would finally fight. Although for the time being this method, Wang Chong quietly said to himself. In his last life, one of Wang Chong's greatest regrets was that he had missed out on the peak of his era, missing out on the chance to compete with those illustrious great generals and marshals. This was an era of dazzling generals, and he, the publicly acknowledged war saint, had never been able to exchange blows with these top-class military figures. This had always been a deep regret in Wang Chong's heart. But now this regret had finally been fulfilled. Even though the price of this clash of soldiers was the fate of the Tang dynasty and the Uzan Empire for the next few decades, as well as the lives of the nearly 1 million civilians of the Southwest, Wang Chong could not afford to lose this war. The eagle, come here. In a little while, follow my orders. Wang Chong came back to his senses, his eyes turning sharp. Yes, young master. The eagle's eyes grew brighter and brighter as he listened to Wang Chong's whisper. In the end, he respectfully replied and swiftly left to carry out his orders. The night was quiet. Compared to the fierce battle at the top of the mountain, the foot of the mountain seemed even quieter. The Tang people wearing the armor of the Uzan people and riding on the highland steeds of the Uzan people had already effected the arrangement of the Uzan army, restraining a large number of troops. At the base of the mountain, everyone was on high alert, but their main task was no longer to deal with the Annam Protectorate led by Xinyu Zhongtong at the summit, but the elusive troops of the Tang people. The sky was dark, and the sky was getting darker. Southwest of the base of the mountain, a group of people looked at the dark storm in front of them and were on high alert. Rumble, lightning flashed. Suddenly, the sound of hooves came from the opposite side. At first it was inaudible, but it gradually became louder. Everyone's spirits immediately became tense. Who are you? Stop. Don't come any closer. An Uzan general stood in the heavy rain with both hands on his scimitar and shouted in the Uzan language. Take off your helmets and show your identity. Behind him, many Uzan cavalrymen sat on their horses. They looked into the distance and pulled out their scimitars. But that was all. No one dared to act rashly, because they had killed their own people by mistake several times before. The current situation made everyone panic. On the one hand, they were suspicious of the identity of the other side, and on the other hand, they were afraid of killing their own people by mistake. Before they confirmed the identity of the other side, all the Uzan people were in a dilemma. Dee-da-da. The sound of hooves was getting closer and closer. Finally, many ferocious black shadows appeared in the heavy rain, as if they had walked out of the netherworld. Don't attack. We are on the same side. An Uzan language came from the dark night. As those people spoke, they quickly approached. Buzz! Not only did the atmosphere not relax, but it also became more and more tense. A cavalryman pressed his hands on the back of his scimitar, and blue veins bulged on his arms. Take off your helmets. Stop. Don't come any closer. Who the hell are you people? Bastard. Didn't I tell you not to come any closer? That everyone became nervous. Because while they were talking, not only did the other side not stop, but they were also getting closer. We are not enemies. That person's voice came from the dark night again. He was still moving forward. Everyone be careful. There is something wrong with these guys. The atmosphere was tense, and even the slowest person could feel it. After experiencing so many things, everyone became very cautious. But no one dared to make a move, because they still couldn't confirm the identity of the other side. Heavy rain poured down, and the pitter-patter covered everything. No one dared to confirm if the other side didn't hear them clearly. After all, this situation had happened before. Humph! A cold snort rang out. In the crowd, no one noticed that there was only one person who clenched his fists and looked at the approaching black shadows. He let out a cold smile of death. While everyone else was worried about the figure in front of them, he felt like he was watching a group of ants walking into a death trap. Come on! Huashu Wuzong looked at the other side like he was looking at a group of corpses. At this moment, Huashu Wuzong was wearing the armor of a soldier and had retracted his aura. It was impossible to tell that he was an imperial great general at all. Even if Long Kimbo were standing next to him, he probably wouldn't be able to recognize him. But even so, everyone knew that this soldier's physical strength was enough to destroy the world and inflict a heavy blow on this army. 600 zhang, 500 zhang, 400 zhang. As the distance got closer and closer, Huashu Wuzong remained hidden in the army, unmoved, but the killing intent in his eyes grew thicker and thicker. 300 zhang. This distance was already rather dangerous. If he went any further, just a little bit more, these people would enter his attack range. As long as he was within 100 zhang, not a single one of them would be able to escape. An imperial great general was more than capable of destroying them. Buzz! The footsteps stopped abruptly. Without any warning, the army suddenly stopped in their tracks. Twang twang twang. The bowstrings vibrated, and before anyone could react, a torrential rain of arrows rained down from the opposing camp. Ah! Ah! Screams filled the air as everyone was struck dumb by this sudden turn of events. Even Huashu Wuzong was dumbfounded. He had never imagined that these people would suddenly change tactics and use an arrow rain. But what was even more shocking was yet to come. Hung long long, the warhorses neighed. After the first wave of arrows, the strange black shadows suddenly turned around and ran away without saying anything. Before the others could react, the army had already run 5,000 zhang away. Astonishment, surprise, shock. Countless complicated expressions appeared on the faces of the soldiers, all of them dumbstruck by this sight. Kill them. Boom. Rumbling sounds could be heard as everyone stared in shock at the sudden turn of events. However, one person suddenly stood out from the crowd and shot forward like a bolt of lightning in pursuit of Meng Hao. Do you think you can escape? Chapter 543. Aya! The warhorses neighed, and countless people screamed as they were sent flying. While they were still in the air, they were torn into countless pieces by the tyrannical Gang Qi. Even the warhorses were shattered into pieces and scattered in the fierce red flames. In all directions, a torrent of energy surged in the void like a scorching sun, filling every inch of the void and burning fiercely. Huashu Wuzong's stellar energy was so tyrannical that wherever it shrouded, a scarlet sun seemed to rise. Amidst this intense blaze, the sky seemed to be ablaze. Before the torrential rain in the clouds could even fall, it was ignited and evaporated into white smoke. Pieces of flesh and blood, ashes, accompanied by fear, spread in the void. Huashu Wuzong's strength had already surpassed everyone's expectations. Before him, everyone felt as insignificant as an ant. The moment they sensed Huashu Wuzong's aura, that was as vast as a mountain and as vast as the sea, all of them felt a boundless fear. Run! It's Huashu Wuzong. Only his stellar energy can emit this kind of flame. We're no match for him. Run! Only General and the others can deal with him. The warhorses galloped forward. An intense fear hung over their heads like the sword of Damocles, stabbing at their hearts. Everyone's faces were ghastly white, devoid of all blood. As the mortal enemy of the Southwest, everyone knew of Huashu Wuzong's reputation. And in this war of the Southwest, the Annam Protectorate had fought with Uzun's forces for over a month. They were all too familiar with Huashu Wuzong's aura. The blazing red lotus karmic fire burned the heavens and the seas, incinerating all. It was a nightmare for all the people of Lion City. Even more shocking was that this operation had been meticulously planned and calculated by Wang Chong. A distance of 300 zhang should have been a safe distance. But no one had expected Huashu Wuzong's methods to be so godly. For other experts, the distance restriction seemed to be non-existent to him. Just like that, everyone suffered heavy injuries. The warhorses beneath their feet, the halos on their bodies, the armors on their bodies, the weapons on their bodies, and the strength they had cultivated were all insignificant to Huashu Wuzong. In just one move, Huashu Wuzong had destroyed the Tang army's vigorous fighting strength. Humph! Don't you think it's too late to escape now? Huashu Wuzong looked at the fleeing Annam Protectorate and sneered in his heart. A strong murderous aura erupted from his body. As the commander-in-chief of the army, he could not be easily moved. However, since he had decided to attack, he would not give him any chance to escape. It was time to end this farce that had affected him so much. Under such circumstances, if he still let these Tang people, who had been harassing everywhere, escape, then he would really be in vain as the great general of Uzan. All troops listen up. Kill all the Tang people. Leave no one alive. As he charged out, Huashu Wuzong gave the order to attack. Arg! Kill them! Waves of excited roars erupted from the void behind Huashu Wuzong like a tsunami. The momentum was so shocking that even Huashu Wuzong could not help but raise his eyebrows. Kill them! Damn it, we finally caught them! It's really them. The great general is here. And they still dare to come. They're asking for death. Bastards! These Tang people are dead meat. The resentment and dissatisfaction that had accumulated in the hearts of the Uzan people burst out in an instant. After fighting for so long, not only did they not find any traces of the Tang people, but they were also toyed with by them. The Tang people threw them into chaos and killed their own people. This was a disgrace. Now they could finally vent their anger. Rumble! Like a river bursting its banks. All the Uzan cavalrymen roared crazily. They followed Huashu Wuzong at a speed that they had never seen in their lives and rushed forward. 5,000 feet. 4,000 feet. 3,000 feet. The crowd chased crazily in the heavy rain. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. In front of them, the Tang people's formation was completely messed up. Maybe it was because they did not expect the great General Huashu Wuzong to show up, and were too frightened. This was a good chance. The chaos of the Tang people was undoubtedly a great chance for the Uzan people. Rumble! Like a bolt of lightning flashing across the void, the Uzan people rushed into the army of the Tang people. Bang! 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 The scimitars flashed by, and the figures fell from the horses one after another like wheat being harvested. However, in the next moment, when everyone was most excited and looking forward to it, all the shouting stopped abruptly. It was as if an invisible hand had gripped everyone's necks, choking their throats. Everyone's face was filled with astonishment. Even Huashu Wuzong was stunned. How is this possible? No one knew when the army stopped charging. A young general suddenly jumped off his horse. Looking at the dead Tang people on the ground, he was dumbfounded and couldn't even speak properly. The Tang people on the ground were dead, but not in the way that people imagined. Those dead Tang people were completely different from the Tang people's impression of them. Their faces were red, revealing a plateau red that could only be obtained from living at high altitudes and on high terrains for a long time. In fact, this was the plateau red. Damn it! They are not the Tang people at all, but our Uzan people. These Tang people used the dead of our Uzan people to pretend to be them. An Uzan general roared angrily. Those Tang people on horseback were not the Tang people at all. They were the Uzan people who had chased after Wang Chong, as well as the other Uzan people who had died in battle. This wave of attack seemed fierce and threatening, but in reality, besides a small number of Tang people, the rest were all the corpses of the Uzan people who had died in battle. We've been tricked. At the very front of the army, Huashu Wuzong sat on a tall horse, his eyebrows twitching. He had only expected the beginning, but not the end. The enemy was far more cunning than he had imagined. Their plan of harassment was a mixture of truth and falsehood. In this wave, even he had been tricked. At this moment, Huashu Wuzong suddenly had a very bad feeling. Boom! At this moment an earth-shattering shout suddenly came from the northeast. Through the gray curtain of rain, the originally quiet northeast suddenly became noisy. Shouts of killing, angry roars, and the sound of weapons rang out. In the dark of night, countless people charged into the Uzan people's line of defense. Not good. Huashu Wuzong's eyelids twitched, and he cried out inwardly. We've fallen for the Tang people's trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain. Hiya! With no time to think, Huashu Wuzong turned his horse around and suddenly shot toward the place where the battle was taking place. At this point, things had completely gone out of control. No matter how slow Huashu Wuzong's reaction was, he knew that the enemy's harassment was only a feint. The real attack had only just begun. All of the enemy's previous attacks added up together, all for this moment. The terrain in the southwest was extremely flat, with only a few hills. It was not easy for an army to hide in such a situation, but at such a close distance, Huashu Wuzong had not sensed them in the slightest. To be able to hide an army to this extent, the enemy's grasp of time and distance was simply exquisite, not something an ordinary famed general could compare to. To think that there would be someone of this level in the southwest, Huashu Wuzong had to admit that he had truly underestimated them. Retreat, retreat! Stop them with everything you have, Huashu Huizong anxiously shouted. But even this Yusang great general, whose name resounded throughout the southwest, had miscalculated at this moment. From the start, Wang Chong had come up with this plan of harassment, luring the tiger away from the mountain. He had never intended to give the enemy a chance to retreat. Hurry! Group 12 aerial fire. Chapter 544. Infantry, axemen, spearmen, cavalry, shield-bearers and godly archers worked closely together under Wang Chong's command. Like moving clouds and flowing water, they advanced steadily towards the top of the mountain. Unlike the previous ambushes, Wang Chong led his army in a way that no one could have imagined. He chose to attack from the front. Wang Chong did not even think of concealing it. 40 to 50,000 soldiers broke through the gray curtain of rain and attacked in a way that no one could have imagined. And of all the Tibetan armies, the northeast corner just so happened to be their weakest point. Wang Chong's previous ambushes had allowed him to figure out the Uzun's attack patterns and their defensive arrangements. The Uzun army's strength was no secret to Wang Chong. Hurry! Time is of the essence. Huashu Wuzong has been lured away by us. We need to break through the Uzun army's formation as quickly as possible and bring the Annam Protectorate out of here, Wang Chong said. Wang Chong's father Wang Yan, the Eagle, the veteran General Chen Shusun, and the two commandants Su Shiping and Su Anduan all gathered around Wang Chong. According to Wang Chong's will, they commanded the army to advance like a tidal wave. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing against metal rang out incessantly. Arrows, spears, sabers, and swords intertwined. In the southeast, all the Uzun soldiers were completely routed under the pincer attack of the two armies. Wang Chong's attack was extremely sharp. The army he chose to attack was precisely where the Uzun army was the thinnest. The cooperation between the different armies was impeccable. Swords could not pierce through, and water could not splash through. It far exceeded everyone's expectations. On the top of the mountain, Xingyu Zhongtong had already received Wang Chong's messenger pigeon. All of the armies hurriedly coordinated with each other and attacked from the northeast. With two pincer attacks, the situation of the battle in the northeast could be imagined. Run! How can there be so many of them? It's the Wang father and son. They've turned around. We can't stop them. What about the great general? Only the great general can deal with them. Only the great general has a way. That Uzun would never give in so easily, but the form was stronger than the person. At the same time, he was facing attacks from both Wang Chong and Xingyu Zhongtong, and Wang Chong's halo of Dusk Stallion and Bane of the battlefield, and Uzun's men were no match at all. The collapse of the northeast side was far faster than anyone could have imagined. Wang Chong did not even give Huashu Wuzong a chance to return to the main army before he completely pierced through the Uzun army in the northeast. Lord Wang, you really came. On the top of the mountain, everyone was drenched in the heavy rain. Xingyu Zhongtong stood on the top of the mountain, his eyes filled with desire. Seeing Wang Yin step out, he was first shocked, and then his face lit up with joy. Xingyu Zhongtong had long ago wanted to know who it was that had come to save him, but Xingyu Zhongtong had never imagined that it really would be Wang Yan, who should have disappeared by now. In the pouring rain, Xingyu Zhongtong was deeply moved that Wang Chong's forces had not abandoned them. Lord Protector General has misunderstood. I am not the one commanding the army this time. It is my unworthy son Wang Chong. Wang Yan's expression was solemn. Hearing Xin Yuzhongtong's words, he didn't say much. He only stepped to the side, revealing Wang Chong behind him. Lord Xinyu, it has been a long time. Wang Chong did not stand on ceremony. With a wave of his sleeve, he lightly stepped forward, passing by his father to appear before Xin Yuzhongtong. Chong Gongzi. Upon seeing Wang Chong, Xin Yuzhongtong's eyes widened in disbelief. Xin Yuzhongtong had met Wang Chong before, and it had been at Zhangqiu Jinxiong's banquet. Zhangqiu Jinxiong seemed to view Wang Chong in a new light, and for this reason, Xin Yuzhongtong also had a deep impression of Wang Chong. Moreover, Xin Yuzhongtong had some understanding of Wang Chong's affairs. The things he had done in the capital, including the storm he had stirred up in the royal court, were not things that an ordinary person could accomplish. Not to mention, the Holy Emperor seemed to regard this young man highly. Naturally, Xin Yuzhongtong had a deep impression of him as well. Not to mention the Lion City, which had saved nearly 80,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate, was single-handedly constructed by Wang Chong. Due to this, Xin Yuzhongtong was filled with gratitude toward the distant Chong Gongzi in the capital, even though Wang Chong was only a teenager, and he didn't even have a title of nobility. You are welcome to follow my official WeChat account in Weibo. You can search for Huang Fuqi. There are many contents that can't be found in novels. Chong Gongzi, it's you. Xin Yuzhongtong abruptly stepped forward and grabbed Wang Chong's hands in agitation. For Wang Chong to descend from the sky at this moment was nothing short of a miracle. This was something that Xin Yuzhongtong didn't expect. Wang Chong was also taken aback. He hadn't expected Xin Yuzhongtong's attitude. After all, he was still the Protector General of the Empire, a position on par with people like Geshu Han and Zhang Shogui. Though in terms of personal prestige he was still lacking. Lord Protector General, this isn't the time to talk about this. I've already used the tactic of luring Huishu Huizong away. However, he might return at any moment. Time is of the essence, so we must leave as soon as possible. Wang Chong opened his palm and revealed the token that Zhangqiu Jinxiong had given him. The battlefield was ever-changing, and anything could happen. The slightest mistake could lead to the destruction of an army. Wang Chong didn't dare to make this sort of mistake. After all, no one could bear the consequences. This is the token that Lord Zhangqiu gave me. Seeing the token is the same as seeing the person. Lord Protector General, on our way here, Lord Zhangqiu said that the past is the past, and the urgent task is to preserve our strength and ensure the safety of the Annam Protectorate. As for the affairs of the Southwest, listen to my orders in the future. My lord, please cooperate. This is also Lord Zhangqiu's order. As Wang Chong spoke, he took out a white envelope. Xin Yuzhongtong was the Protector General of the Empire. Regardless of his original status, he was currently the commander of the Southwest. A single token didn't mean much. Only Zhangqiu Jinxiong's personal token and handwritten letter could be trusted. This was why Wang Chong had visited Zhangqiu Jinxiong to ask for them. Chonga, even Wang Chong's father, Chen Shusun, and Su Shiping were shocked to see the letter and token in Wang Chong's hand. The token was secondary, but it was clear that none of them knew about the letter. Not even Wang Yan had expected that Wang Chong had come this time to take over Xin Yuzhongtong's command. Chonga, what are you doing? Making trouble. Stand down. Wang Yan harshly rebuked, his face dark. But Wang Chong pretended not to hear, his eyes fixed on Xin Yuzhongtong. Rain continued to fall from the sky, but Wang Chong used stellar energy to deflect it, so that none of it landed on the letter. Time was short, and the sounds of fighting could shake the heavens. They didn't have much time left. Although he had thought that Xin Yuzhongtong wouldn't disobey, he didn't have much time left. But if Xin Yuzhongtong refused to listen, there was nothing he could do. Hiss! Xin Yuzhongtong couldn't hear anything. He stared at the black token in Wang Chong's hand, and then at the letter. He took in a deep breath and came to his senses. He didn't even need to open the letter in Wang Chong's hand to recognize it as Zhangqiu Jinxiong's handwriting. With Zhangqiu Jinxiong's token and his handwritten letter, there was no longer any doubt as to the credibility of Wang Chong's words. Xin Yuzhongtong had never imagined that the Protector General would give the command of the army in the southwest to this teenager. and one that didn't have much to do with the Southwestern Protectorate Army. At this moment, countless thoughts flew through Xin Yuzhongtong's mind. As he stared at the familiar token and letter, and recalled the strange activity at the base of the mountain, Xin Yuzhongtong seemed to understand something. There's no need. Xin Yuzhongtong pushed aside the letter in Wang Chang's hand. There were some things that didn't need to be seen. Since Lord Zhangqiu was willing to hand over his personal token to the young man before him, his intentions had been made clear. That letter was superfluous. Since Lord Zhangqiu has already given the order, we will follow young master's orders. Everyone hear my order. Assemble the army and break out. On the mountain, Xin Yuzhongtong issued the final order for this battle. Bang! The soldiers on the mountain immediately responded, their morale soaring. Let alone Wang Yan and Chen Xusan. Even Wang Cheng was surprised that Xin Yuzhongtong had so readily handed over command. Everyone hear my order. Break out. Elated, Wang Cheng urged his horse down the mountain. At the same time, he immediately gave the order for the army to break out. Rumble. Just like that, a massive breakthrough that would decide the fate of the empire, and the southwest began in the rainy night. I didn't think that it would be him. In the darkness, Wang Cheng had no idea that a pair of eyes had been silently observing him. If he had only been guessing at the start, then now, with Wang Cheng's order, everything became clear. The person commanding the army at the base of the mountain, and exhausting the Uzun army, was none other than that youth galloping down the mountain. No wonder Lord Protector General gave him command of the army. Xin Yuzhongtong had long ago heard of Wang Cheng's abilities, but not even Xin Yuzhongtong could have imagined that Wang Cheng was also talented in the field of military affairs. Although he was a little shocked, upon further thought, Xin Yuzhongtong began to understand. For a teenager to be able to command an army that far surpassed that of a renowned general of the empire sounded inconceivable, and anyone else would find it hard to believe. But if it was Wang Cheng, when he thought about the regional commander's incident, and that miraculous lion city that had saved everyone's lives, Xin Yuzhongtong began to understand. I didn't think that it would be the Wang clan's father and son. Xin Yuzhongtong laughed bitterly in his heart, then quickly galloped off into the rain. Although Xin Yuzhongtong had long ago determined that the one commanding the army at the base of the mountain was not Wang Yan or Wang Fu, in the end, he had still proven that it was the Wang clan's father and son. Chapter 545. Cavalry in front, shieldmen on the outside, spearmen in the center. All soldiers advance. Master archers square, ready to respond at any moment. 20 paces to the left, cavalry square. Scatter them. 21 paces to the right, archers, concentrate your fire. Like an avalanche, the two armies merged into one, their momentum unstoppable. At the very least, in terms of numbers, the Annam Protectorate was not much inferior to the Uzun. At the very least, in the northeast, the Tang dynasty's military power completely surpassed that of the Uzun. Wang Cheng's tactics had always been to anticipate the enemy's moves. Those Uzun soldiers would often be sniped and cut off by Wang Cheng before they could even form up. Xin Yuzhongtong's forces didn't even encounter any decent resistance before they successfully charged from the summit to the base of the mountain. Under the charge of nearly 100,000 soldiers, the Uzun army in the northeast was completely routed. The chaos spread like a tide to every corner of the base of the mountain. Bastard! In the distance, Longkimba's eyes were red, his hair standing on end in anger. He had sensed the disturbance in the distance, and had immediately urged his horse over. But even after all this time, he was still unable to get close. On the way, all kinds of routed Uzun cavalry were fleeing in panic. It wasn't much when one or two people were fleeing, but when tens of thousands of people were fleeing together, it felt like they were advancing against a raging flood. Even though Longkimba was a renowned general of the Uzun, he was helpless. He had killed 6 or 7 fleeing soldiers, but he had only been able to slightly slow the flow of the fleeing army. He had been completely unable to stop the chaos of the army, much less get close. Longkimba was so angry that his entire body was trembling. On this journey south from the Uzun Plateau, Longkimba had been practically invincible, but now, all his strength was useless. Damn the Tang people. Run! Run! I'd like to see if every one of your 90,000 soldiers has grown wings and can run as fast as the highland steeds on the plateau. Longkimba's heart seethed with rage as he stared at the distant army of the Tang people, his eyes almost spitting fire. Everyone listen up. Break out of the encirclement and advance towards the north. Don't stop. Almost at the same time, Wang Chong also urgently ordered the army to rush to the northern region. Young master, actually, we don't have to be so anxious. Suddenly a voice rang in his ears. An Annam Protectorate general in his 40s with a dark face had somehow snuck up to Wang Chong's side. He glanced at the defeated Uzun soldiers from time to time with a tempted expression. Now that our armies have gathered, our numbers are no less than Uzun's. Now that the Uzun have been defeated, the situation is advantageous to us. Perhaps we can even turn the tables and defeat them, inflicting heavy losses on the Uzun. He hadn't originally had this idea, but as he watched the Uzun soldiers around him being routed by Wang Chong's army, all of them fleeing like wolves, he couldn't suppress this idea. If they could defeat the Uzun, if they could defeat Huoshu Wuzong, this would be an enormous victory for the Tang dynasty, one that would boost the confidence of the entire army. Are you one of Lord Xinyu's subordinates? Wang Chong was already familiar with the Annam Protectorate generals that had followed his father. Even if he had never spoken to them before, he was familiar with their faces. But this Annam Protectorate general, Wang Chong had never seen him before. This is... The dark-faced Annam Protectorate general froze for a moment before subconsciously nodding his head. He didn't understand why Wang Chong would suddenly ask this question. Then it's no wonder. Then let me ask you, of the 4 Uzun regions, the Uzun in the northeast has been routed, but have the southwest, northwest and other regions also been routed? In this battle, have you seen Huoshu Wuzong, Longkimba, or any of the other Tibetan generals? Wang Chong faintly smiled. This isn't the case. The dark-faced Annam Protectorate general couldn't help but awkwardly say. Since only one of the 4 sides has been routed, and Longkimba and Huoshu Wuzong haven't appeared, how can we talk about defeating them? Moreover, have you forgotten that there are still more than 300,000 soldiers of Meng Shizhao's army? If we fight with the Uzun until both sides are heavily wounded, and Meng Shizhao's army finally appears, what will we do? What will happen to the people of the southwest? Have you forgotten the true responsibility of the Annam Protectorate? At the end, Wang Chong's expression was harsh and stern. Annam! The existence of a protectorate had never been purely for the sake of war, because war would never end. The ultimate goal of war was to protect the peace of one side. Whether it was Annam, Anbei, Anong or Anshi, they were all the same. When soldiers immersed in intense battle for so long, they would forget the responsibility on their shoulders. The dark-faced general of the Annam Protectorate army instantly paled, and for a moment, he found himself unable to speak. Let's go. Our Tang dynasty will fight Uzun and Meng Shizhao sooner or later, but not now. There will come a day when they will pay the price. Even if it's not this one. Wang Chong did not continue speaking. Hiya. His horse galloped forward. There were even more things waiting for him there. Young master, what about Longkimba? Chen Shusun only glanced at the dark-faced Annam Protectorate general in the distance, before urging his horse to follow. He was a little far away, so he couldn't hear what Wang Chong was discussing with him. He was currently concerned about another matter. Although Huoshu Wuzong has been transferred away, Longkimba and the other generals aren't so easy to deal with. Longkimba might not be as good as Huoshu Wuzong, but he's probably not too far off. He and the other Uzun generals might appear at any moment. Don't worry, he can't come right now. Wang Chong grinned and waved his hand. Chen Shusun stared in shock at Wang Chong, not understanding why he would say this. Haven't you noticed? I'm already controlling the Uzun soldiers on the left and right sides. As long as these 2 sides remain in disarray, no matter how urgent Longkimba is, he won't be able to get here in a short amount of time. Moreover, now that Huoshu Wuzong has gone to the southwest, someone will definitely take his place in the central army. This person will undoubtedly be Longkimba, given the distance between him and this place. I've already arranged a shield for him, As long as I'm willing, this shield will always be there for him. Wang Chong indifferently said. Buzz. Chen Shisan's mind was shaken. One moment, he would look at the calm Wang Chong. The next moment, he would look at the chaotic Uzun soldiers, his mouth agape, unable to say a single word. I didn't think that he could even do this. Although Chen Shisan had long ago noticed that Wang Chong was rhythmically attacking the main army, he had not expected that Wang Chong was using this method to control the Uzun army. As the great general of the Uzun, Huashu Wuzong's strength was renowned throughout the world, and he was a heaven master of the Southwest Triangle. And Longkimba, as the leader of the 5 Tiger Generals, was also an extremely terrifying existence. But both of them had been silently transferred away by Wang Chong and crippled of their martial arts. The two of them hadn't even been able to get to the battlefield in time, nor had they been able to get close. The art of war and commanding an army at this level could already be considered an art. This completely refreshed Chen Shisan's impression of the battlefield as cruel, cold-blooded, tyrannical, and cold. Chen Shisan had never imagined that a single person could reach this level in the art of command. Let's go. We don't have much time left, Wang Chong said. With this order, all the infantry began to run at full speed through the rain. Those who could seize warhorses did so. In addition, the more mobile cavalry remained in the rear to cover the retreat. Let's go. In the last wave, the Uzun army was still in chaos, unable to form an effective ambush. Wang Chong's forces swiftly left. Wang Chong had expanded the halo of Dusk Stallion to its greatest extent, and this war halo was now playing an important role. Before the rest of the Uzun army could catch up, Wang Chong's forces had already pulled away and vanished into the darkness. Boom! Not long after Wang Chong's forces left, there was a boom as a blazing bolt of stellar energy exploded in the rain, sending 20-some Uzun cavalry and their horses flying. In the rear, Longkimba was so angry that his face was red as he charged forward. All of you, get out of my way! Longkimba's furious roar resounded in all directions. Swish! As he stared in the direction Wang Chong's forces had fled, Longkimba immediately took a step forward and seized the warhorse of a nearby Uzun cavalry, effortlessly pushing it 10-some zhang away. Everyone follow me. Anyone who dares to disobey will be dealt with according to military law. Damn Tang people, I'd like to see where you can run to. With this order, Longkimba charged out, seething with a murderous aura. Behind him, several thousand Uzun cavalry followed, their hooves pounding far into the night. After them, I want to kill all these bastards. Longkimba's right hand reached behind his back and pulled out an extra-large scimitar the width of a palm. This scimitar was not an ordinary Uzun scimitar. In some aspects, it was rather similar to a scimitar of the Central Plains. Follow General. Anyone who dares to fall behind will be dealt with according to military law. Charge. The Uzun don't need cowards. All of you follow me. The faces of Longkimba's subordinates were drenched in the rain as they harshly bellowed. Under the leadership of these people, Longkimba's 7,000 to 8,000 soldiers quickly gathered together, and even more were gathering like a dark cloud from the rear. The air was tense and ready to fight. Warhorses galloped forward, and under Longkimba's rallying call, the Uzun were gathering like a cloud. The Annam Protectorate was still in a predicament. General, we've come to help you. Suddenly, a group of 4,000 to 5,000 fully armed soldiers shouted and rushed over from another direction. It seemed like reinforcements were rushing over from the southeast and other directions. Bastards, hurry up. Don't let them get away. Longkimba clenched his teeth and roared. Yes, milord. Vaguely, that person said in a low voice. This man had spoken without saying anything, but now that he did, Longkimba shivered as a bad premonition arose in his mind. The first part of this person's words was fine, but the latter part was clearly spoken in a strange and indistinct accent. The people of the Uzun would never speak like this, nor would they speak with this sort of accent. But before Longkimba could think any further, the warhorse began to rumble forward, and the group was rapidly closing in on him. He felt like a sharp blade was pressing against his back, as if something sharp had locked onto him from a distance. Longkimba's heart chilled as he suddenly understood. Damn it, the Tang people! A bolt of lightning flashed through Longkimba's mind as he suddenly understood what was going on. The Tang people. These Uzun people with strange accents were actually the Tang people. There had been incidents in the past where the Tang people had disguised themselves as Uzun people to attack an army, but Longkinba had never imagined that they would be so ruthless and daring as to leave behind an army to pretend to be their own people. And they were rapidly approaching him at this time. These bastards! Longkinba's face was savage, and his teeth were clenched so tightly that they were about to break. The craftiness and arrogance of these people had already surpassed his imagination. They had also used all sorts of methods to deal with him. But if they thought that they could use this sort of method to deal with him, then they were far too naive and self-deceiving. Thing that doesn't know its limits, die for me! Longkinba roared like a tiger, and without even thinking, he gripped his saber and fiercely slashed at Wang Chong. Rumble! The world trembled as a savage dragon of black and gold appeared behind Longkinba. With a wave of its tail, it transformed into a majestic saber energy that slashed forward. Boom! The saber energy did not cause the expected upheaval. Instead, there was a boom as the saber energy seemed to be blocked by something. General Long's saber energy is excellent. Come take a punch from me. A vortex rapidly formed in the air and began to expand like a hurricane, pushing toward Longkinba. Wang Yan! Longkinba paled in fright at this voice. However, this was not the end. Another deep voice came from another direction. General Long, there's still someone else. This voice was Xin Yuzhongtong. He had been ambushed. Longkinba's face instantly turned as white as a sheet of paper. He had clearly seen Wang Yan and Xin Yuzhongtong leave, but he had never expected that they would remain behind and ambush him. Rumble! With a heaven-shaking boom, Longkinba's saber energy barely managed to block the blow before being sent flying by Wang Yan and Xin Yuzhongtong. Longkinba's saber energy was definitely not weak. As the leader of the 5 tiger generals, Longkinba had absolute confidence in his own strength. If it were just Wang Yan or Xin Yuzhongtong, Longkinba would have nothing to fear. But when these 2 old generals of the Tang dynasty worked together, not even Longkinba was a match for them. Bang! Chapter 546. My lord! This sudden attack left everyone dumbfounded. At this time, no one had expected that the Tang dynasty would still have a trick up their sleeves, a disguised army lying in wait in the rear. And the ones leading them were Xin Yuzhongtong and the famous general of the Tang dynasty, Wang Yan. These 2 were experts second only to great General Huashu Wuzong, and could last for a very long time in a one-on-one battle, much less working together to ambush Longkinba. This single attack had heavily injured Longkinba. Protect my lord! Damn it! The Tang people are too despicable. Stop them! Kill them! All the Uzun soldiers instantly reacted, all of them furious and shocked. Heedless of their own safety, they charged at Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan. But before they could charge over, the thousands of elite cavalry of the Annan Protectorate army shot forward like a sharp knife, cutting through the Tibetan formation and cutting the pursuing force in two. Kail! Kail! The clip-clop of hooves resounded through the air. The Annan Protectorate's attack had come from a completely unexpected direction. Even Longkinba had been fooled, let alone the others. Rumble! Warhorse against warhorse, saber against sword clashed against saber. Caught off guard, the Uzun soldiers were forced back again and again under the assault of the Annan Protectorate. A single charge from this army of 6,000 to 7,000 had instantly thrown them into chaos. Kill him! The eyes of Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan blazed with cold light as they locked onto Longkinba on the crouching ox rock. This fierce general of the Uzun was the leader of the 5 tiger generals. Killing him would definitely deal a massive blow to the morale of the Uzun soldiers. Clatter! 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 The 2 highest commanders of the southwest of the Tang dynasty unleashed a lethal attack on Longkinba, the leader of the 5 tiger generals. Protect the Lord! We must not let the Tang people hurt His Excellency. In an instant, all the surrounding Uzun generals were so anxious that their eyes turned red. They led the surrounding soldiers and charged madly toward Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan. Moo! Shadows of Uzun yaks appeared in the air one after another, mixed with the shadows of monsters from the legends of the highlands. Torrents of stellar energy blotted out the sky and covered the earth, like countless raging dragons and soaring dragons, slamming towards Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong from all directions. Boom! Boom! In the blink of an eye, two extremely deep and majestic stellar energy suddenly erupted from the depths of the crowd, growing larger and larger. That powerful force was incomparably tyrannical. In just an instant, it shattered the torrents of stellar energy that were surging over from all directions. Not only that, the two extremely powerful stellar energies swept through the air, sending those charging Uzun generals and soldiers flying like ragdolls. "Aya! Ah!" Screams resounded through the air. Not even these brave and fierce Uzun soldiers working together were a match for the two highest commanders of the southwest of the Tang dynasty. Boom! The two Tang commanders sent the Uzun soldiers flying, not slowing down at all as they charged at Longkimba. Huashu Wuzong isn't here, so this is the best chance to kill Longkimba. Brother Gingji, attack with all your strength. Don't give him a chance. Xinyu Zhongtong's furious roar resounded through the sky. In Lion City, Longkimba was undoubtedly a massive threat. This was one of the 5 tiger generals from the Great Snow Mountain Temple. He was extremely powerful and had a variety of techniques. In a one-on-one battle, no one beneath Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan could be a match for him. But no one else could do anything to him. Now that Longkimba was alone and deep in enemy territory, this was the best chance to kill him. No matter how astonishing his strength was, against the combined attacks of Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan, two Tang dynasty commanders, only death awaited him. "My lord, it's not good." Just when Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan were about to launch their lethal attack, a figure suddenly flashed past. Before anyone could clearly see who it was, Longkimba was pushed away. An Uzun general had charged forward and pushed Longkimba away. Longkimba reacted very quickly. He extended a hand, grabbed a highland steed with a glossy mane and mounted it. Hiya! Squeezing his legs, Longkimba didn't even look behind him as he pushed through the crowd and fled like a bolt of lightning. If either Xinyu Zhongtong or Wang Yan appeared, he would dare to exchange a few blows with them. But he was already injured. If he stayed any longer, he would assuredly die. Unless Great General Huashu Wuzong appeared, no one would be able to block the attacks of the two of them. Xinyu Zhongtong, Wang Yan, you won't be able to escape the southwest. I'll definitely tear the two of you to pieces. Longkimba's enraged voice came from the distance, but his feet did not slow down. Meanwhile, the other Uzun cavalry were charging at the pair with all their might. "Protect my lord. Stop them." Wang Yan also commanded the army to respond. Compared to one-on-one combat, he was still more proficient in this kind of military confrontation. Damn it! As he watched Longkimba flee and used the other Uzun cavalry to stop him, Xinyu Zhongtong's face darkened. His 5 fingers dug into the body of the Uzun general like a steel chisel, and then he threw him onto the boulder. Boundless stellar energy poured into his body, directly shattering his meridians and internal organs, and extinguishing his vitality. A good chance completely wasted. His face was filled with unwillingness as he spoke. A valiant general of the plateau like Longkimba was usually with the other fierce Uzun generals, Huashu Wuzong, or Daluan Ruozan. If he hadn't been in such a rush to pursue the fleeing Annam Protectorate, he would never have given them such a chance. If he missed this chance, it would be very difficult to get it in the future. No, I have to kill him no matter what. Xinyu Zhongtong hardened his heart and was just about to chase after Longkimba and put an end to him. But at this moment, the situation suddenly changed. Roar! Roar! A dragon-like roar reverberated through the air, soaring into the sky from afar. This sound was imbued with boundless might, creating a pillar of vacuum in the midst of the rain. With this pillar of vacuum as the center, ripples began to spread out in every direction. It was like massive ripples had appeared in the air. All of the torrential rain was a dazzling white. It was blown up wave after wave, and it kept on shaking. Huashu Wuzong. Xinyu Zhongtong's expression sank, and his heart trembled. In all of the southwest, only Yusang Great General Huashu Huizong possessed such vigorous stellar energy, and was able to use his voice to open a path through the torrential rain. He's here. Just as Chong'er predicted, he's very fast. Wang Yan had been in the middle of commanding his army to scatter the Uzun army, but when he heard the roar, he had walked over. Huashu Wuzong is on his way, and the other armies are also on their way. It's not good for us to stay too far away. Once we scatter these pursuers, and use them to block our pursuers, our mission will be complete. Wang Yan glanced up at the sky. The sky, which was originally dim, was now completely dark. This attempt to break out of Lion City had taken a long time, and coupled with the time it had taken for the soldiers to engage in close combat, it was already nightfall. Although the sky had darkened, the torrential rain had not stopped. The heavy downpour, coupled with the darkness of the night, was the best time and place for them to break out of the encirclement. The Uzun army had already lost them several times during the day, and now that it was nightfall, even good eyesight was useless, making it even more difficult to track down the Annam Protectorate. Even if they all rode horses, it would be useless. This attempt to break out of the encirclement could be considered a complete success. This was what Wang Chong had analyzed to Wang Yan. There's no other way. Although I really want to fight to the death with Huashu Wuzong, young Master Chong is correct. Now is not the time to fight to the death with them. Xin Yuzhongtong's eyes were red as he viciously stared into the distance. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice but to turn his horse around and leave with Wang Yan. Everyone, hear my order. Quickly retreat. Although he wanted to kill Longkimba, the person Xin Yuzhongtong wanted to kill the most was Huashu Wuzong. In the southwest of the Tang dynasty, this Uzun great general would forever be the Annam Protectorate's greatest foe. Gallop. With Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan bringing up the rear, the party quickly vanished into the rainy night. Where are they? Just as Xin Yuzhongtong's party had left, another stalwart figure, vigorous and imposing like a mountain, appeared on the scene. Clang! His right hand loosened, and a Wenzhong-long saber inscribed with refined steel fell to the ground, splashing mud into the air. My lord, they've already left. An Uzun officer said, his body trembling as he bowed. Who injured you? Huashu Wuzong turned his head to look at Longkimba. His face was as gloomy and emotionless as water. Thick stellar energy flowed on the surface of his body, transforming into blazing flames. Of the 5 elements in 5 elements, Huashu Wuzong was one of the most tyrannical and violent fire element experts. The flames on his body could even be seen from far away in the dark night. Reporting to General, it was Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan. Longkimba also lowered his head, a fearful expression on his face. Although he was renowned among the Uzun for his courage, not even caring about Xin Yuzhongtong or Wang Yan, he was still extremely fearful of great General Huashu Wuzong. Or perhaps even more so, he felt reverence. Huashu Wuzong had made his name even earlier than he had. Long ago, his name had floated over the Ngari royal lineage of the Uzun Plateau. He was a true general born for battle. Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan? It seems like we've really met our match this time. He can even order around the 2 of them. Huashu Wuzong gazed in the direction Xin Yuzhongtong and the others had left, an extremely cold light in his eyes. Longkimba stared blankly at Huashu Wuzong in confusion, not understanding what the great general was saying. Using the luring of the tiger from the mountain to lure me away, and then using an ambush to ambush you while you were in pursuit, killing you in one fell swoop. You don't think that this was the idea of Xin Yuzhongtong or Wang Yan, do you? Huashu Wuzong sneered. He had to admit that he had made an error in judgment. His opponent was even smarter than he had imagined. Forget about everything else. It seemed like even his own actions had been calculated by him. Moreover, breaking out of an encirclement had never been a simple matter, especially when it involved an army of nearly 100,000. Huashu Wuzong had originally believed that no matter what, he would be able to make it in time. But he hadn't expected that his opponent would be able to organize his army in such an orderly manner. Breaking out, defending, counterattacking. Everything had been carried out like flowing water. There hadn't been the slightest chaos in such a major operation. And he had even used the fastest speed to order the tens of thousands of soldiers on the mountain to leave. Not even Huoshi Wuzong could do such a thing in such a short amount of time, and with such speed. This was something that only existed in theory. His opponent's command of the army had already reached a nearly miraculous and inconceivable level. Chapter 547. Longkimba was dumbfounded. He had been so focused on killing the enemy that he hadn't really thought about this for a moment. Truly, in the southwest, the Uzan Empire had long been at odds with the Tang dynasty, so it was extremely familiar with the generals of the southwest. Although Xin Yuzhongtong wasn't some mediocre or incompetent general, he was also not some nimble and crafty general. He was a classic example of a general defending a city. As for Wang Yan, he had heard of him before. In this clash of lions, he had a first-hand experience. Although this was a general of both offense and defense, he was more skilled in defense than offense, a Tang dynasty general. No matter which one of the two, it was impossible for them to come up with such a strategy of backstabbing and ambushing in the dark. Then, my lord, what do we do now? They definitely can't have gotten far. Should we pursue them? Longkimba said, his heart suddenly filled with a fierce desire to kill. In a moment of carelessness, he had almost been killed by Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan. No matter who the person behind the curtains was, the fact that they could come up with this sort of plan made Longkimba feel an intense desire to kill. There's no need. But before Longkimba could think of a way to find that hidden Tang dynasty general, he heard a voice that left him flabbergasted. Since it's like this, let them go. But my lord, how can we just let them go? Longkimba's eyes went wide as he stared in surprise at great General Huoshi Wuzong. The great general had always been famed for his bravery. But now that the Tang people hadn't gotten far, he had given up. This was truly beyond Longkimba's expectations. This was not the great general's usual style. More importantly, Longkimba was extremely unwilling. It's already dark, and there's a torrential downpour. Where will you go to find them? In addition, in this sort of weather, cavalry are practically useless. If my guess is correct, that Tang general likes this sort of strategy. If we pursue them, they'll definitely have other ambushes. We won't be able to see them in the dark, and if we get ambushed, we'll suffer even greater losses. Moreover, there were a few times when they disguised themselves as our people. They could ambush us at any time in the dark. Do you know how to defend against them? In the last sentence, Huoshi Wuzong got to the point. The Tang general on the other side was skilled in calculations, and his use of the art of war had reached perfection. His level was far above that of Xin Yuzhongtong, Wang Yan, and the generals of the southwest. Just now, even he had been tricked. More importantly, even Huoshi Wuzong had to admit that it was impossible to defend against the enemy's method of disguising as him and ambushing him in all sorts of ways. Even Huoshi Wuzong had no good way to deal with it. This was an army of 100,000, not 10 or 20,000. If the other party were to impersonate him, it would be impossible to tell the difference. He had to admit that this move was really annoying. But Longkimba hesitated. He had originally thought that it would be a large-scale attack, but this result was really out of his expectations. But Longkimba had to admit that he had almost died to this move. With the sky darkening and the curtain of night descending, it would be even easier to ambush him. Moreover, his opponent even knew a little Uzan. Wasn't it said that no one in the Tang dynasty knew how to speak Uzan? Ha! With a fierce fling of his right hand, a fierce and tyrannical stellar energy exploded out of Longkimba's body and smashed into the ground, creating a hole about 1 zhang deep. It was obvious that Longkimba had no choice but to accept Huoshi Wuzong's order. Put it down. I never said that I was going to let them go. Huoshi Wuzong stared in the direction the Annan Protectorate army had left, his eyes exuding a cold light. The storm will eventually stop, and the night will pass. Once the sky brightens and the rain passes, not even that Tang general with his heaven-shaking abilities will be able to do anything. What he can use now won't necessarily be able to use when the time comes. In addition, don't forget that we still have 300,000 of Meng Shizhao's allies there. It won't be too late for us to join forces with Meng Shizhao to deal with them in the daytime. And don't forget that this is a war between Meng Shizhao and the Tang dynasty. It's about time they put in some effort. This is also Prime Minister's will. The Prime Minister that Huashu Wuzong spoke of was naturally Daluan Ruozan. In the entire Ngari royal lineage, only the Prime Minister of the Ngari royal lineage could order Huashu Wuzong around and use his reins to reign in this valiant general. Longqinba had not expected this to be Prime Minister's will. Don't be unwilling. If you can obtain the greatest harvest with the smallest price, why not do it? Don't forget that the goal of our Uzan warriors isn't just the southwest and the Annan Protectorate. In the future, we will have even greater battles. We can't lose too many people on a single battlefield. Huashu Wuzong indifferently said. Yes, my lord. Longqinba had been unwilling at first, but upon hearing these words, he immediately bowed, his heart filled with deep respect. The southwest was only a corner of the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains, so the greater battlefield that Huashu Wuzong spoke of naturally wasn't this place. It was the struggle between the Uzan and the Tang dynasty. This was no secret among the upper echelon generals of the Uzan Plateau. A centipede dies but it doesn't fall down. From the moment the Tang Empire and the Tsempo decided to attack the Tang dynasty, the war between the Uzan Empire and the Tang dynasty had already begun. This war in the southwest was only the prelude to an even greater war. Although the Tang dynasty had declined and was no longer the same as before, it still possessed a vast, glorious, and terrifying army. The Southwestern Protectorate was only one of the protectorates of the Tang dynasty. Although the Uzan Empire had already made its decision, all the generals were extremely cautious about this war with the Tang dynasty. Killing them a day earlier and killing them a little later. Let them struggle for a little while. With these words, Huashu Wuzong turned his horse around and immediately rode back. This operation could be said to have been extremely unsuccessful. The results achieved by the army of 100,000 were completely different from what he had imagined. But none of this was because his side was too incompetent, nor was it because Xinyu Zhongtong and the Annan tribes were too powerful. It was because of the military tactics adopted by the Tang dynasty. This result had truly caught everyone by surprise. The casualties were also rather high. Moreover, this war had also allowed Huashu Wuzong to faintly discover some things, all of which he needed to deal with. Comparatively speaking, the pursuit of Xinyu Zhongtong and the others wasn't that urgent. After all, it was only a day. They couldn't possibly run out of the southwestern territory. Huashu Wuzong quickly disappeared into the night. Behind him, the Uzan army also slowly moved in the opposite direction of Wang Chong and the others, disappearing into the heavy rain. This torrential pursuit ended in such an unexpected manner. But the tense atmosphere that hung over the southwestern skies did not dissipate. On the contrary, it became even more intense. The heavy rain was boundless. Several large trees with twisted branches stretched across the earth. The ground was covered in a thick layer of mud. The combination of the perennial rainstorm and the mud had practically transformed the southwestern lands into a swamp. And in a place invisible to the naked eye, a faint murderous aura pervaded the air. Time slowly passed. All was quiet. Except for the pitter-patter of the rain, nothing else could be heard. After some time, suddenly the ground began to loosen. The mud covering its surface suddenly bulged, and then a muscular man leapt out like a fish. What's going on? Uzan's people actually left? Su Shiping gazed in the direction of the distant towering mountain, his face full of confusion. The war between Uzan and the Tang dynasty had already progressed to this point, and there was no longer any room for negotiation. Given Uzan's position and Huashu Wuzong's temperament, the fact that they had not pursued them was truly unexpected. It's hard to say. Don't be careless for now. Perhaps Uzan's people are just deliberately lulling us into a false sense of security. Given Uzan's usual valiance, they won't give up so easily. On the side, Suanduan also stood up from the mud. This sort of disguise was truly very uncomfortable. One had to cover their entire body with filthy mud, even covering the cracks in their armor. Although this truly made it harder to detect, their bodies were already soaked to the bone. Adding on this layer of mud was even more uncomfortable. There's no need to think about it. They've already left. A figure slid down from a large tree nearby. Wang Chong tiptoed and gently slid down from the tree to the ground. He was wearing that heavy armor, but his expression did not relax at all. Uzin's people can set up a deceptive formation and defend without attacking. But no matter how they defend, they can't hide the sound of the horse's hooves. Even if they have a way to find so many cloths to cover the hooves and hide the sound, they can't hide the sneezing and neighing of the horses. With so many war horses, it's impossible to do this. This isn't the style of Uzin's people. Wang Chong said this, but his brows were deeply furrowed. I originally thought that Uzin's people would take advantage of the situation to pursue us, but I didn't expect to underestimate them. Huashu Wuzong probably predicted that we would set up an ambush along the way, so he cancelled it. Moreover, cavalry are not suited for fighting at night, and there's also a storm. Huashu Wuzong must have known that the time was not good, and that we were prepared, so he made the prompt decision to simply give up. I originally thought that Huashu Wuzong was only valiant, but it seems that I truly underestimated him. Just based on this decisiveness, Huashu Wuzong is assuredly a great foe of our southwest. Although the enemy's retreat was beneficial to them, the enemy returning in defeat, and the enemy retreating on their own initiative, were two completely different concepts. No matter what, this result was not good for him, or the Tang dynasty. This is even more troublesome than I imagined, Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he gazed to the southwest. Chapter 548. Let's go. Wang Chong stood beside two large trees and waved his hand. Whoosh! A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. In the empty space where only Wang Chong, Su Anduan, and Su Shiping stood, from near to far, from front to back, countless silhouettes stood up from the ground. In just a short while, it was as if thousands of people had come to life. Some grabbed weapons, some shook off the mud on their bodies, and they all stood up from the ground. Even farther away, in the densely packed hills, more and more soldiers of the Annan Protectorate Army were rising from the ground. Huashu Wuzong's judgment was correct. Wang Chong had indeed prepared a huge trap for Huashu Wuzong to fall into. Moreover, it was a trap made up of 40 to 50,000 soldiers. In addition to the deterring cavalry, the rear guards and the bait, it was indeed enough to make Huashu Wuzong suffer. But now, all of this was clearly useless. Pass down my order. Ignore the Uzin soldiers behind us. Everyone march at full speed. We only have one day. After today, Huashu Wuzong and Mengshi Zhao will join forces and chase us at full speed. This is our only chance. No matter what, we have to reach that location before then. If we can't reach it, all of us will die. That is our only chance of survival. Wang Chong looked at the generals gathering around him and said solemnly. The short pursuit with Huashu Wuzong and the Uzin army had temporarily come to an end. But for Wang Chong, this war was far from over. But this time, his opponent was no longer the Uzin cavalry led by Huashu Wuzong, but the Annan Protectorate itself. Escaping from Lion City and successfully breaking through the encirclement only meant that they had a chance to struggle at death's door. Behind the glory of the merger of the two Annan Protectorate, there were too many hidden dangers. Without the cover of Lion City, without the cover of darkness, and without the once-in-a-decade torrential rain, the Tang army was simply incapable of dealing with the Mengshi, Yusang army. More importantly, the southwest no longer had any food. Nay, the war horses neighed loudly. The group of people braved the heavy rain and headed northeast at their fastest speed. The southwest had finally welcomed a night of peace since the war began. The last night of peace. Boom! A dazzling bolt of lightning snaked through the dark clouds over the capital. But unlike the torrential rains of the southwest, there was only thunder and no rain in the capital. In the folklore, this kind of thunder was called sky thunder. And this sort of weather had persisted in the capital for several days. The southwest was in danger, and the front line was about to fall. In all directions, Longxi, Anbei, Anxi, and Annong were also engaged in fierce battles. The atmosphere was tense. Such a situation had never occurred since the founding of the dynasty. Eunuch Gao, I must trouble you to make an exception and report this to His Majesty. Say that this lowly subject requests an audience. In the forbidden area of the inner court of the imperial palace, a square-headed, big-eared, chubby, and amiable eunuch in embroidered robes with a round collar stood in front of the jade steps. In front of him were many civil and military officials kneeling on the ground, as well as the head of the imperial army. Eunuch Gao, I must trouble you to report to the Holy Emperor that the Southwest is in danger. Our 200,000 imperial army soldiers are willing to march to the Southwest. Right now, all sides are in a state of emergency. For the time being, there are no more soldiers available. Mobilizing the imperial army is the best method. Eunuch Gao, everything must be done according to plan. A figure was kneeling in front of the steps, fiercely kowtowing. It was the commander of the imperial army, Zhao Fengchen. The war in the Southwest had been going on for a very long time. The several thousand clan experts and mercenaries, led by Wang Chong, had vanished into the south like a bubble, leaving not the slightest ripple. In the view of many people, his fate was already clear. Several thousand soldiers was like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood in the Southwest. Without a massive army, resisting the Mengshi, Yusang army of more than 500,000 soldiers was like striking a rock with an egg. Thus, the fate of Wang Chong's army had actually been known from the very start. Even though they admired his courage, this was not a wise decision. In the end, they would still have to rely on the army of the imperial court. Commander Zhao, please don't say such foolish words. With 200,000 imperial army soldiers marching south, who will defend the capital? Once the foreign cavalry launch a surprise attack, are you planning to leave the Holy Emperor surrounded by the foreign horsemen? Although the Holy Emperor has the ability to move the heavens, and doesn't need to worry about this, will we, his subjects, still have the face to continue living in this world? The embroidered-robed eunuch faintly smiled. In the imperial palace, the only person with the surname Gao, and the respect of the civil and military officials, and the commander of the imperial army, was the Holy Emperor's personal eunuch Gao, chief steward of the imperial household Gao Lisher. In the inner court, whether young or old, eunuchs or maids, anyone with the surname Gao would all change their surname. Thus, in the inner court of the imperial palace, there was only one person with the surname Gao and the title of eunuch Gao. The Gao bloodline had served 3 generations of emperors, and had always been known as loyal eunuchs. Their status in the Tang dynasty and the palace was transcendent, far beyond that of ordinary officials. Eunuch Gao is correct. We were foolish. But eunuch, time waits for no man. If the Annam Protectorate is completely wiped out, the nearly 1 million civilians of the Southwest will be plunged into misery and suffering. The Mengshi, Yusang army will continue to advance north and eventually reach the capital. As subjects, we naturally have to keep the enemy at the gates of the country. If we allow the foreign army to invade our subjects, how will we have the face to continue living in this world? This time, the 2 royal lineages of the Uzun have mobilized in full force. Next to Zhao Fengchen, the white-haired imperial censor Duan Chao sighed. The Tang dynasty was besieged on all sides. The Bureau of Military Personnel, Bureau of Personnel, and Bureau of Revenue had all been mobilized, doing all they could to recruit soldiers. But all of this was time-consuming and laborious. In order to resist the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army, the amount of provisions, weapons, and warhorses required was no small sum, and none of this could be accomplished in a short period of time. War had always been a system, not a simple matter of mobilizing soldiers. But time waited for no man. Every day grievous news came from the south, and the situation in the empire had everyone in the capital, from the ministers to the common people, in a state of panic. The current Tang dynasty was experiencing an upheaval that it had never experienced before. As long as one was a member of the Tang people, as long as one had a patriotic heart, there was no one who was not worried. Every day, the imperial court was discussing countermeasures, the debate continuing at every moment. An endless stream of officials wanted to enter the palace and meet with the Holy Emperor. But all of them had been stopped. In this crisis that affected the entire Tang dynasty, the most supreme existence of the Tang dynasty, the Holy Emperor, had remained secretive about his stance. No one knew what the Holy Emperor was thinking. Even now, the Holy Emperor had not made his stance clear, nor had he made any decision. Imperial Censor Duan, Eunuch Gao couldn't help but sigh at the old censor's words. You know that I have a patriotic heart, but His Majesty is currently resting, and he has long since ordered that no one is to disturb him. There's nothing I can do. The officials looked at each other in dismay. This sort of excuse had already been used to fool many people. Eunuch Gao, just what is His Majesty's stance? Just what is going on here? His Majesty has never been like this before. The old censor suddenly raised his head, his eyes blazing like the edge of a blade. The current Holy Emperor was hailed as the most ambitious ruler in the history of the Central Plains. And he was also an emperor with grand ambitions. His talent in strategy, his decisiveness in killing, his authoritarianism, and his sharp eyes allowed the great Tang to sweep through the barbarians in his generation and reach an unprecedented golden age. The previous Holy Emperor had been a man of great talent and bold vision. No matter what he did, he always had a well-thought-out plan. There was no need for the imperial court to discuss it. He already knew what to do. All of his decisions were able to win the hearts of the people. But now, the Southwest was engulfed in the flames of war. The Annam Protectorate had been defeated, Li Jingji had been ambushed and killed, and all the protectorates in the north, south, east, and west had been attacked. But the Holy Emperor had still not made a move. This had never happened before. As an old censor who had served 2 generations of emperors, Duan Chao was truly unwilling to see this happen. Ah, old censor, don't you already know about that matter? Ah. Upon hearing these words, the old censor's body trembled as if recalling something. He opened his mouth and was about to say something, but Eunuch Gao raised his hand and stopped him. Let bygones be bygones. It's enough that you and I know about this matter. As for the Southwest, there's no need for you to worry. His Majesty has his own plans. Just because he hasn't made his stance clear, doesn't mean that His Majesty isn't concerned about the situation in the Southwest. Old censor, you've served His Majesty for so many years. Surely you don't understand this? Duan Chao's body trembled, but he heaved a long sigh of relief. No matter what, as long as His Majesty had made a decision, it was the best result. This was also his greatest harvest from this trip. I understand. Many thanks, Eunuch Gao. General Zhao, let's go. Duan Chao pulled the confused Zhao Fengchen up and quickly left the palace. A gentle breeze brushed past the porch, causing the bells to shake one by one. Eunuch Gao hid his hands in his sleeves, a smile on his lips as he watched Duan Chao's group disappear into the distance. A moment later, when the group had disappeared, the smile on Eunuch Gao's face slowly receded. Sigh, he sighed deeply, worry creeping up his brow like a dark cloud. Soon, Eunuch Gao entered the sacred hall. The golden drapes were layered upon one another, and the golden dragons on them were vivid and lifelike, as if they were about to leap out of the drapes. And in the depths of the drapes stood the most noble figure in the world. Although he was doing nothing, merely sitting on the drapes, he exuded an aura that reigned supreme over all beings in the world. He was like a deity whom everyone revered. But for some reason, when Eunuch Gao saw that enormous aura that surpassed all experts in the world, he felt a tinge of weakness. But soon, Eunuch Gao tossed this thought to the back of his mind. Regardless of whether His Majesty was the lofty sage emperor or the prince from back then, in his heart, His Majesty would always be the existence that he respected the most, admired the most, and loved the most in this world. Your Majesty, are we really not going to do anything about the Southwest? Chapter 549. After what seemed like an instant, and also like countless eons, just when Eunuch Gao thought that he would never get an answer, a noble and dignified voice finally resounded through the hall. The Southwest, it is still not the time. Your Holiness. Eunuch Gao's heart trembled at the Holy Emperor's voice, and he couldn't help but give a long sigh. Is it still because of that child? These words were earth-shattering. If any of the ministers of the court were present, they would assuredly be stunned. The southwest was already on the verge of collapse, but the Holy Emperor had still not made his stance known. The will of the heavens was hard to fathom, and the imperial court was filled with all sorts of conjectures. But no one had expected that all this was related to a single youth. The hall was quiet, not a sound to be heard. Behind the layers of golden curtains, that figure as lofty as the sea, as lofty as the stars in the sky, was motionless. No one knew what this lofty holy emperor of the Tang dynasty was thinking. Even Gao Lishur was the same. Although he was familiar with many things, he did not understand all of them. All things are predestined by fate. Whether it is or not, we will soon know. Behind the curtains, the holy emperor did not directly answer, but his words were clearly an admission. But your holiness, can 5,000 soldiers really change the fate of the southwest? Jelifeng and Daluan Ruozan are colluding with each other, and that's an army of more than 500,000 soldiers. Eunuch Gao's head was pressed to the ground, his voice pained. In his decades of service to His Holiness, Gao Lishur had never imagined that he would doubt the Holy Emperor. But the Southwest involved more than 100,000 generals and nearly 1 million commoners. If he were to place all his hopes on a single youth, on an action that overestimated his own abilities, wasn't that no more than child's play? The hall was quiet. Not a single sound could be heard. Gao Lishur was terrified, cold sweat pouring down his back, and even his palms were sweating. This was the first time he had doubted the Holy Emperor, but as the chief eunuch of the inner court and a retainer of the emperor, there were some words that he had to say. In this world, nothing is impossible. Have you forgotten how I ascended to the Great Pole? Ah! Gao Lishur's heart shook violently, and he suddenly raised his head. Of course, he knew how the Holy Emperor had ascended to the throne. At first, no one thought highly of the Holy Emperor. In fact, at the very beginning, no one even cared about him among the princes. But in the end, the Holy Emperor relied on his great talent and bold vision to create this glorious and powerful Tang dynasty, becoming an emperor admired by millions. Gao Lishur had never imagined that the Holy Emperor would have such a high evaluation of that child, even comparing him to himself. Whether or not we have misjudged him will naturally become clear once the Southwest is decided. Everything happens for a reason. Yuan Yi, you only need to know that there is a reason why I chose him. That was enough. Now stand down. In the last sentence, the supreme being behind the veil called out Gao Lishur's secular name in one sentence. Everyone knew that eunuch Gao of the inner court was Gao Lishur, but not many people knew that this eunuch Gao's secular surname was not Gao, but Feng. Yuan Yi was his real name. The emperor would never lightly call out his secular name. But if he did, it would mean that this conversation was over. Yes, your majesty. Your servant will take his leave. Gao Lishur didn't dare to argue and obediently withdrew. After leaving the great hall, Gao Lishur stood in front of the long corridor of jade steps. As he gazed at the row upon row of splendid golden walls and the imperial palace, his heart rose and fell. Even though he had already seen the emperor and received an answer, the doubts in Gao Lishur's heart had not lessened. On the contrary, they had only intensified. The Southwest, alas, His Majesty's thoughts are becoming more and more difficult to fathom. Wang Yan, I hope that your youngest son will not disappoint His Majesty. As this thought flashed through his mind, Gao Lishur quickly descended the jade steps and left Taiji Palace. He had more important things to do. At the same time, as Gao Lishur was leaving Taiji Palace, no one knew that an even greater matter had taken place. Flap flap. The flapping of wings came from the southwest. In the setting sun, no one noticed that 2 carrier pigeons had flown over the southwest corner of the city, flying over the row upon row of roofs, and into the imperial palace. What? Lion City has been breached. In the Bureau of Military Personnel's office, a hand as powerful as a pincer, its veins bulging and its fingers bulging, slammed its 5 palms against a table, shaking it so much that the metal table seemed like it would shatter. This was undoubtedly the most shocking news everyone had received in the last month or so. All this time, Lion City had been the last and greatest source of comfort for the people of the capital. Although the Anan Protectorate had been defeated, the impregnable Lion City, had sheltered nearly 100,000 people from the Annam Protectorate. This was the final barrier of the southwest. As long as the Annam Protectorate remained, the situation in the southwest would not worsen. There was still a sliver of hope left in everyone's hearts. But no one had expected that Lion City, upon which they had entrusted all their hopes, would be breached. Are you sure there's no mistake? Could it be a false report? Lion City is impregnable. Wasn't it said that it was forged from refined inscription metal? The walls are more than 30 feet tall, so how could they be so easily breached? Moreover, didn't that place have nearly 100,000 Annam Protectorate soldiers? The voice harshly said, its voice tinged with deep shock. It was clear that it was completely unable to accept this result. My lord, this matter has already been confirmed. Our people infiltrated the southwest more than a month ago. They personally investigated and learned of this news, and they confirmed it time and time again. Moreover, they even captured an Annam Protectorate soldier, who got lost in the rain. This has already been confirmed by his own mouth. It's said that Lion City ran out of food long ago. In order to prevent the Mengshi, Yusang army from trapping them in the city, Protector General Xinyu and General Wang Yan decided to abandon the city and break out. Now that everyone has left, and without the protection of Lion City, with Daluan Ruozhen, Huashu Wuzong, and all the Yuzhan cavalry in pursuit, the fate of all the Annam Protectorate soldiers is unknown. Everything is up to the will of the heavens. Because of the severity of this matter, the moment we received the news, we immediately rushed over 800 li, not daring to delay. On the way, we've already lost 20-some elite dragon horses. We've exhausted 10-some elite scouts to death. We've also lost 10-some pigeons and eagles. My lord, please make a decision. The scout himself had a pale complexion. The matter that attracted the most attention in the Tang dynasty and affected the most people was the Annam Protectorate of the Southwest. Although the other protectorates had also been attacked, they were insignificant compared to the Annam Protectorate. Lion City had fallen, and all the Annam Protectorate soldiers were fleeing with all their might, completely under the pursuit of the Yuzhan cavalry. Just the thought of this was enough to make all the Tang people pale in shock. The Annam Protectorate's meager forces were simply incapable of dealing with the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army. Everyone knew this long ago. The Annam Protectorate's fate was not going to be good. But when all this was about to become a reality, no one could accept it. From the moment they heard this news, everyone felt their hearts sink. It was like a massive boulder was pressing down on their chests, making it so that even taking a breath required endless energy. The Law of Military Affairs office was deathly still. All the important officials of the Bureau of Military Personnel had ashen faces, their faces ashen. Pa! Suddenly, the sound of a porcelain cup shattering could be heard. Everyone subconsciously turned in the direction of the sound. In the direction of the main gate, Zhangqiu Jinxiong had just stepped over the threshold, the teacup in his hand crushed into pieces. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's face was ashen and unsightly. It's over. The Southwest is about to be lost. 180,000 elites have been destroyed. How could this be? Reinforcements. 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 While there's still a chance, hurry and send reinforcements. It's too late. Even if we send reinforcements, it's already too late. And besides, where will the reinforcements come from? Are we just going to let this go? This is a calamity for the Tang dynasty. This is a calamity the Central Plains has never seen before. The Law of Military Affairs, the Bureau of Personnel, the Bureau of Revenue, the Bureau of Works. The news from the Southwest seemed to grow wings, flying inside and out of the palace, spreading to all the departments of the 6 bureaus. Like a tsunami, the incident in Lion City shook the entire imperial court. Fear, unease, anxiety, all sorts of emotions filled the capital. The mood in the capital was grave, and even the markets were much quieter, lacking the usual hustle and bustle. How could this be? It can't be, it can't be. In the Wang family residence, Wang Zhen's big uncle slammed his fist on the table, his chest heaving and his face as white as a sheet of paper. Wang Yan, Wang Fu, Wang Chong. Chapter 550. The Wang clan had 4 siblings. The eldest son Wang Zhen, the second Queen Ru Shuang, the third Wang Yan, and the fourth Wang Mi. Wang Ru Shuang was a married woman, so she could be considered half an outsider. She could not be considered a legitimate member of the clan. Wang Mi was the commander of the Imperial Army training camp. Although his status was not low, he could not enter the court or go to the barracks. He simply could not inherit the authority and status of the Wang clan. The only ones who truly inherited the Wang clan's status and influence were the eldest son Wang Zhen and the third son Wang Yan. Wang Zhen pursued the literary path, while Wang Yan pursued the martial path. The 2 brothers pursued completely different fields of endeavor, and the Wang clan's influence on the martial path rested entirely on the shoulders of Wang Yan and his sons. Even though Wang Zhen and Wang Yan were competing against each other at the very start, it was just like a person's left and right feet. Even though the shape and direction of the 2 feet were different, it was impossible for a person to walk with just one leg, whether it was the literary path or the martial path. If one was missing a leg, the Wang clan's influence would be greatly reduced. Lion City had Wang Yan and Wang Fu, father and son. They were the most outstanding generals in the army, and also the symbolic representatives of the Wang clan in the army. With the fall of Lion City, the fate of Wang Yan and Wang Fu could be easily imagined in the face of Uzun's army of tens of thousands of cavalry. And with the fall of Lion City, Wang Chong was in an extremely perilous situation. The Mengshi, Yusang army that had been freed would continue north and swiftly crush Wang Chong's army. No matter where Chong'er is, find him quickly and order him to return to the capital. No, send someone. Even if we have to tie him up, we have to bring him back to the capital. Wang Zhen gripped the table for support as he said these last words, his forehead drenched in cold sweat. If Wang Yan and Wang Fu died in battle, the Wang clan's influence in the future would be greatly reduced. No matter what, the Wang clan could not risk losing all its standing in the military. Wang Chong was the Wang clan's Qilin son, and he was also the junior that Wang Zhen had placed the greatest hopes on. Wang Zhen's expectations of him far surpassed those of his own son, Wang Li. No matter what, Wang Chong could not be allowed to die. Go! Following Wang Zhen's order, several dozen top-notch martial arts experts rushed out from the Wang clan in a matter of seconds. Riding on their steeds, they swiftly disappeared into the southwest. The news of the 3 great training camps and the prestigious clans of the capital shook the upper echelons of the capital. Although the southwest was garrisoned by the Annan Protectorate, there was no lack of descendants of the various clans in the army. With the destruction of Lion City, it was easy to imagine what would happen to the descendants of these aristocratic families. Walala! In the chaos of the capital, no one noticed that a gray-white carrier pigeon had flown over mountains and rivers to enter the Su clan estate in the northwest corner of the capital. We finally arrived. Seated around a round sandalwood table, Su Yiqin placed her hands on the table. Looking at the note on the table, she and the others from Deflecting Blade Manor heaved a long sigh of relief. There was not a single word on the piece of paper on the table, only a simple map of the southwest. On the map that represented a mountain, someone had used a brush to heavily draw a cross. Only Su Yiqin and the people at her side understood the meaning of this symbol. The mountain on the map was the destination of this operation. After more than a month of time and effort, gathering the strength of all the clans in the capital, we've finally delivered all the provisions and war machines to the destination. We've done all we can. Now we can only rely on young master, Su Yiqin said as she gazed at the note on the table. For more than a month, she had focused all her energy on this matter. She had racked her brains and exhausted a great deal of her mind and energy. Now that everything was done, Su Yiqin began to feel waves of exhaustion. After all, she was just a woman. Perhaps to outsiders, all of this seemed very easy. She spent every day sitting in her study, doing nothing at all. But only Su Yiqin knew just how difficult it had been. The pressure she faced every day was unimaginable to an ordinary person. The Southwest was tied to the lives of more than 100,000 soldiers and nearly 1 million commoners. After Wang Chong had left for the south, He had placed his entire back in Su Yichin's hands. This was a rare trust, but it was also an enormous pressure. This was a burden that Su Yichin had never shouldered before. The official account's exclusive video, War God So Young-san, has already been uploaded. It will be updated tomorrow. Everyone please follow me. Add the WeChat account and search for Huang Fuqi. But Sister Qichin, is everything we've done really useful? That's right. More than 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army have been gathered in the southwest. And there are also experts like Huashu Wizang, Jelifeng, and Daluan Ruozan. Can young Master Chong really help the Annam Protectorate change the course of this war? Nearly 1 million caddies of provisions and war machines. Are these really useful? In the study, everyone was looking at Su Yichin. After Wang Chong left the capital, he had handed over all affairs to Su Yichin. This also meant that Wang Chong had given a portion of his status to Su Yichin. Right now, Su Yichin was the #1 person in all of Deflecting Blade Manor, even among the scions of the noble clans. Moreover, unlike others, the people at Su Yichin's side would always have the most thorough understanding of the situation in the southwest. Even though Lion City had been destroyed, there was one thing that everyone knew. Up until now, Wang Chong's side had remained safe and sound. And from the very start, he had been planning all sorts of operations in an attempt to reverse the situation in the southwest. And they were part of this plan. But even so, they had no idea what role their mission would play in this war. Although they had an enormous trust in Wang Chong, not even those closest to Wang Chong knew what Wang Chong was up to. The empire's southwest was already on the verge of collapse. Even the smartest person would be powerless to reverse the situation. No one understood what Wang Chong was planning, not even Su Yichin. I'm sure that all of you understand what sort of person Wang Chong is. Although I don't know the details of his plan, I only want to say that he wouldn't do something like this for no reason. In this matter of the Southwest, I unconditionally trust him. So I hope that all of you will trust him as well. This is the only thing we can do. Su Yichin looked at the people around her, her expression unprecedentedly serious. Su Yichin had always misunderstood Wang Chong. But when the war in the southwest broke out, Su Yichin's view of Wang Chong underwent a 180-degree reversal. When the southwest was in turmoil, when the entire court and the capital were still in a state of debate, only Wang Chong had taken the initiative to step forward. He had used up all his wealth, using the enormous wealth he had accumulated with Wuxia steel, to recruit a group of experts, and then resolutely and decisively left for the south. Even though the road ahead was dangerous, even though he had long ago understood that the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army, even though Huashu Wizang, Daluan Ruozan, and Jelifeng were all renowned generals of the world, and he also understood that the final outcome was death, Wang Chong had still resolutely and decisively set off. That was the first time Su Yichin had gotten to know Wang Chong, the real Wang Chong. Su Yichin had to admit that her heart had been moved. In front of Su Yichin, all men had to bow and scrape. Su Yichin had never known what it meant to be a true man. But when she saw Wang Chong, when she saw his dispirited figure leading 5,000 soldiers out of the capital, Su Yichin suddenly understood what it meant to be a true man. A true man. Although he was only a teenager, there was a real man hidden in that youth's body. No matter what, I have to come back alive. Chapter 551. A drop of rain fell from the thick clouds, piercing through the air and landing on the muddy ground, ultimately vanishing without a trace. This was the last drop of rain after the torrential downpour. Hurry! 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 Don't fall behind! Hiya! Beneath the clouds, a black flood of steel snaked across the earth. In this black flood, black banners soared into the sky, the character Fortang engraved upon them glaringly. It had been a day and a night since they had withdrawn from battle last night. The nearly 100,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate had not slept or rested this entire time. Even though all of them were exhausted, even their war horses panting, not a single one of them had stopped. And not a single one of them had complained. This time, They were all in a race against time, fighting for that sliver of a chance at survival. "My lord, just where are we going?" Su Shiping and Su Anduin, flanking Wang Chong on the left and right, couldn't help but ask. From yesterday until now, the march had never ended. However, the two of them realized that Wang Chong's army was not moving in the same direction. There was no mistaking the fact that the army had fled northeast at the very beginning. But later on, this was no longer the case. Slowly, even the slowest officer began to realize that Wang Chong's army was not heading north at all. But if Wang Chong did not say anything, no one could ask. Even the highest-ranking officers in the army, Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong, tacitly approved of Wang Chong's actions. In this entire process, neither of them had asked a single question. "You'll know in a little while," Wang Chong indifferently said, his eyes looking forward. He did not directly answer. The short battle had come to a temporary end, and the Mongolian army had been left far behind. But although Wang Chong appeared calm on the surface, the anxiety in his heart had not lessened in the slightest. The Annam Protectorate had far too many infantry and far too few warhorses. Even though he had already done his utmost to change his movements and confuse the Mengshi, Yusang army's target, he had no choice. But it could only confuse them for a while. With the speed of the Uzun cavalry, they would soon catch up. Therefore, Wang Chong felt as if there was a needle on his back and a maggot in his bones. It was not just Wang Chong. In fact, this anxiety and uneasiness shrouded the entire army. "Su Qichin, it's all up to you now whether I and my 100,000 men can survive or not." Looking at the dark clouds circling above his head, thoughts flashed through Wang Chong's mind. The battle was still far from beginning. Although an expert of the imperial great general level, like Hueshu Wuzong, had appeared in the battle last night, it had only been a brief encounter. Daluan Ruozhen had not appeared, nor had Jelifeng. The intelligent and courageous Mengshi Zhao Great General Duan Gechuan, and his 300,000 soldiers, who were on the same level as Hueshu Wuzong, had not appeared. Moreover, there was still the 70,000 Uzun soldiers in the rear, who had not yet arrived. The decisive battle between the Annam Protectorate and the Mengshi Yusang army was still far from here. But this decisive battle was not far away. Although he had already arranged for Su Yiqin to make all sorts of arrangements, Wang Chong had no idea if this move would have any effect. "Young master, we've arrived." As Wang Chong was in a daze, he heard a voice at his ear. The eagle was riding a buckskin horse, a massive eagle perched on his shoulder. Wang Chong opened his eyes and followed the eagle's gaze. He saw that on the horizon, beneath the roiling clouds, a towering mountain towered over the earth, imposing and majestic. Upon seeing this mountain, Wang Chong took in a deep breath and came back to his senses. "All soldiers advance at full speed. No one is allowed to stop. Anyone who disobeys will be dealt with according to military law." While his voice was still echoing through the air, Wang Chong urged his horse forward and charged forward. Behind him, the army of 100,000 seemed to be stimulated by something. Suddenly, they surged forward like a tide. On the majestic mountain, a few dozen zhang from the foot of the mountain was a horse-tethering stone. A stone tablet stood beside it, exuding a desolate aura. As Wang Chong rode past, he gazed at the stone stele with a complicated look in his eyes. "What's this?" A curious voice came from beside him. The eagle, Chen Shusun, Su Shiping, Su Anduin, and the other generals had all rushed over from the rear. A horse-tethering stone in a place like this was extremely strange, and the stone tablet beside it made it even stranger. More importantly, the words on the stone tablet were strange and twisted, and no one could read them. "This is a horse-tethering stone from the second year of the Great Han Dynasty's Yuan Feng." Wang Chong looked at the horse-tethering stone and stone tablet and sighed. It's been almost 1,000 years since then. As soon as Wang Chong finished speaking, everyone's expressions changed. The eagle, Chen Shusun, Su Shiping, Su Anduin, and the other generals all looked over, their eyes filled with astonishment. Wang Chong was able to determine that this was a horse-tethering stone of the Great Han, which was nothing special. But to be able to determine that it had been in the second year of the Great Han Dynasty's Yuan Feng was truly astonishing. "This is the Han Dynasty's seal script," specially used to carve stone tablets. It's been more than 1,000 years, so it's normal that you don't recognize it. With a complicated expression, Wang Chong extended a finger, pointed at the steel, and began to read out the words on it one by one. Bahu General Guochang, under the orders of the great Han's Emperor Wu, returns north to Kaidian. Tie the horse here, and erect this stone tablet as a record. The words on the stone tablet were written in bold and vigorous strokes, and it inadvertently revealed a spirit of being in high spirits and looking down arrogantly upon the world. Wang Chong paused, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. Finally, he said the most important words. This stone tablet has another name, the Kaidian Decree. Buzz! As soon as Wang Chong said this, everyone's expression changed. Even Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, who had rushed over from behind, suddenly paled. The crowd finally understood why Wang Chong's expression had been so grave when he had passed by this stone tablet. Bahu General Guochang was a martial artist with a transcendent status, a titled general. Although this person's name was not well known in later history, not many people knew of him. But in the south, especially in the southwest of the empire, there was practically no one who did not know of him. The reason was very simple. Bahu General Guochang was the first person in the history of the Central Plains to open a path through Irai and conquer the Six Zhao. During the Great Han Dynasty's Yuanfeng era, Bahu General Guochang returned with Great General Wei Qing after pacifying the Xiongnu in the northern desert. He led his army south to quell the rebellion in Nanyue. On the way back, Guochang received an order from Emperor Wu of the Han to pacify Yunnan. On the way back, Guochang stopped to look south and set up a stone tablet. This was the famous Han Wu Opening Yunnan Tablet, also known as the Han Wu Opening Yunnan Order. When Guochang opened Yunnan, Mengshi Zhao was not called Mengshi Zhao yet, and Irai was not Irai either. Instead, it was called the Ancient Yunnan Kingdom. It was in the hands of this Bahu General Guochang that the power of the Central Plains dynasty expanded from the hinterland to the Six Zhao of Irai. In the following dynasties, all the powers of Irai submitted to the Central Plains, and this was the root cause. It could be said that this Bahu general of the Han dynasty was the true first person to open up territory in Yunnan. Without this Bahu general, the Tang dynasty would not have been able to expand its influence to Irai. The people of the Annam Protectorate had been guarding the southwest for a long time, so they were naturally very familiar with Guochang's deeds. Thinking back to nearly 1,000 years ago, in the Han dynasty, when this ancient general led the army into and out of Yunnan, high-spirited and vigorous, invincible. Thinking back to today's army looking north in panic, hurriedly fleeing for their lives, everyone's hearts were heavy and incomparably ashamed. Our Annam Protectorate has the duty of guarding the southwest. Now, not only have we disobeyed the imperial order, we have to abandon the city and flee. If General Guo were still alive, he would probably feel deep disdain for us. Xin Yuzhongtong raised his head to the sky and gave a long sigh, his heart filled with complex emotions. As the Annam Protector General, he could not escape the blame for the development of the southwest. As he stood before the tablet of Emperor Wu of the Han opening Yunnan, there was no one who felt worse than him. Chapter 552. Protector General, there's no need to blame yourself. It's not the soldiers' fault that they couldn't win. Mengshi Zhao and Uzun colluded with each other and mobilized all their forces, totaling more than 500,000 soldiers. If you include the peasants and laborers that Mengshi Zhao used in this battle, it's no less than 800,000 or 900,000. The 180,000 elites of the Annam Protectorate would not be able to hold the fort by themselves, much less hold them off. It's not just the Protector General. Anyone else would be the same. Wang Yan immediately came over and comforted him. Wang Yan had been leading troops for no less time than Xin Yuzhongtong, and in some aspects, he had even been leading troops for a little longer. But unlike other people, Wang Yan did not take any stance against Xin Yuzhongtong, nor did he have any prejudices against him. Although Xin Yuzhongtong could not escape the blame for the Battle of Irai and the Annam Protectorate's defeat, It was also an indisputable fact. But the strength of Mengshi Zhao and Uzun was also an indisputable fact. The empire's southwest had been peaceful for several decades, and everyone had lived in harmony. No one had expected that Mengshi Zhao and Uzun would be so daring as to completely break off all pretense of cordiality with the Tang dynasty. Moreover, they had mobilized the entire strength of the empire from the very start of the war, leaving no room for maneuver. Let alone Xinyu Zhongtong. Anyone else would have probably suffered defeat in the face of Jelifeng's breakthrough and large-scale assault. Perhaps some other commander in the army might have had the talent to defeat a foreign army of 500,000. But Xinyu Zhongtong clearly did not possess this sort of talent. And it was unrealistic to demand this of all the commanders in the army. This was why Wang Yan did not have any prejudices against Xinyu Zhongtong. General, there's no need to console me. How could I not know what sort of mistakes and responsibilities I have shouldered in this battle? Xinyu cannot escape the blame for the 100,000 soldiers. Once this battle is over, if I am fortunate enough to survive, Xinyu will go to the holy capital and ask for forgiveness from the Son of Heaven. Xinyu Zhongtong bitterly smiled. Before anyone else could react, Wang Chong's eyes widened, and he couldn't help but glance in surprise at Xinyu Zhongtong. In his last life, without his participation, the 180,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate had been completely wiped out, leaving only Xinyu Zhongtong to survive. For Xinyu Zhongtong to try to gloss over his wrongs after such a major event, he did his best to exaggerate his role in the war to be. Wang Chong had heard this sort of thing many times, so his impression of Xinyu Zhongtong naturally wasn't very good. But the words Xinyu Zhongtong had spoken in front of King Wu of Han's opening Yunnan steel had come from the bottom of his heart. Wang Chong could tell that this was no pretense. Compared to Xinyu Zhongtong's performance in the past, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. This was the true style of a responsible general. Was it my intervention that changed the course of events? Or did something else happen in the war back then that I don't understand? Wang Chong glanced at Xinyu Zhongtong, his heart in turmoil. Back then, Xinyu Zhongtong was reviled by thousands of people. If he was really as responsible and manly as he was today, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, and suddenly, Wang Chong thought of Zhangzhou Jinxiong in the distant capital. In a flash of inspiration, Wang Chong seemed to understand something. Looks like the problem lies with Zhangzhou Jinxiong. Wang Chong suddenly sighed in his heart. He had already understood the crux of the problem. It's easy to change mountains and rivers, but it's hard to change one's nature. Given Xinyu Zhongtong's personality, there was no way he would have changed so much. But if Zhangzhou Jinxiong intervened, everything would be completely different. Xinyu Zhongtong had a good personality, and Zhangzhou Jinxiong wasn't much worse. But Zhangzhou Jinxiong's desire for power was far greater than anyone else's. With such a major incident in the southwest, Zhangzhou Jinxiong couldn't escape the blame, and he couldn't possibly sit still. Even if Xinyu Zhongtong wanted to admit his guilt, Zhangzhou Jinxiong would never allow it. If he interfered, Xinyu Zhongtong wouldn't dare to resist, and it would only take a day for him to change his mind. In truth, Wang Chong had only met Zhangzhou Jinxiong a few times. Even in his last life, a great general like this was not someone of Wang Chong's level could easily interact with. The vast majority of the time, Wang Chong could only learn about this tiger of the empire, of the southwest through the mouths of others. But in just a few meetings, this former Annan Protector General had left an unprecedentedly deep impression on Wang Chong. No one had ever been able to do this before. Whether it was when he had helped Yang Zhao enter the capital and contacted consort Taizhen, or when the old Minister of War was retiring, he had stubbornly entered the capital and sought a way to replace the old Minister of War's position, or when he had met Wang Chong and spoken to him, he had unhesitatingly given him his personal token. This tiger of the Empire of the Southwest, who had reached the age of mandate of heaven, had always had a thirst for power. The decisiveness and daring that he had derived from this was enough to make anyone sigh in admiration. In the War of the Southwest, many people focused their attention on Xinyu Zhongtong and the 180,000 elites of the protectorate, neglecting the distant Zhangqiu Jinxiong in the capital. Xinyu Zhongtong was Zhangqiu Jinxiong's subordinate, and the one who had been groomed by him. If Zhangqiu Jinxiong made a request, he would have found it impossible to refuse. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. And everything has indeed changed. The 180,000 soldiers have been wiped out, and as the commander-in-chief, Xinyu Zhongtong could not escape the blame. The only path left for him was death. Thus, he had wanted to whitewash his mistakes and shift the blame, because not shifting the blame meant death. But now, the 180,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate still had 80,000 left. Although Xinyu Zhongtong could not escape the blame, it had not reached the point where death was certain. As long as that was not the case, Xinyu Zhongtong was still the commander-in-chief that Wang Chong knew. The times really make men. Wang Chong sighed. It was hard to tell whether he was feeling joy or sorrow, or perhaps some other emotion. Xinyu Zhongtong was a man with a straight back, and he was also a general of the Tang dynasty. As long as there was a sliver of hope, Wang Chong did not wish for the soldier of the empire to turn into the traitor that everyone cursed in his previous life. Hiya! Taking a deep breath, Wang Chong urged his steed forward and leaped from the side of the stele, heading toward the foot of the mountain. There, Wang Chong could already see a few familiar faces waiting for him. Ha ha ha, Gongzi, you're finally here. Before Wang Chong could say anything, an azure-robed old man of 50-some years suddenly strode forward, his eyes bright. Spreading out his withered hands, he happily and excitedly welcomed Wang Chong. Wang Chong, I just knew that you would succeed, that you would definitely succeed. The old man was all smiles, the excitement in his heart evident in his words. Ha ha ha, Zhang Shouji, Sir Zhang, you truly did not disappoint me this time. I've kept you waiting. Wang Chong dismounted from the white-hoofed shadow and tightly grasped Zhang Shouji's hands. This skinny old man with graying temples was naturally the master craftsman of the Bureau of Works, the true architect of Lion City, and the greatest contributor to this southwestern war, Zhang Shouji. Although the Annam Protectorate's breakout had only begun during the torrential rain yesterday, Zhang Shouji's forces had actually broken out much earlier. Haha, I was truly worried for a long time about the southwest defeat. Later, when I heard that young master was heading south, I immediately knew that the empire's southwest would be fine. Young master, it's truly wonderful to see you again. Zhang Shouji excitedly said as he gripped Wang Chong's hands. It was as if he had placed all his hopes on Wang Chong. Wang Chong said nothing, only spread open his arms and gave him a passionate and grateful hug. In more than a year, this old man was clearly much thinner than when he had seen him in the capital, and his entire body seemed much more haggard. In more than a year, he had gone from nothing to a magnificent city of steel that could hold more than 100,000 people and withstand the assault of an army of more than 500,000. If not for this old man, no one else would have been able to accomplish such a magnificent feat. Wang Chong felt a heartfelt respect for this old man, who was nearing his 40s. Zhang Shouji had played a major role in the survival of 80,000 of the Annam Protectorate's 180,000 soldiers. No one could deny this. You've worked hard. Wang Chong sighed. Young master speaks too seriously. In truth, the one they should be thanking is you. Zhang Shouji raised his head and looked at the young man in front of him. From the contempt he felt when they first met, to the shock he felt when he built the city, to the admiration he felt now, only Zhang Shouji understood what he had experienced. In Lion City, he had enjoyed the adoration and vigilance of the heroes of the Annam Protectorate, but only Zhang Shouji understood that Wang Chong was the true hero behind the curtain. While he was still hesitating over the construction of the city, and could only see the art of engineering, what Wang Chong saw was the fate of the Southwest, the 180,000 soldiers of the empire, and the lives of nearly 1 million civilians. In the end, everything proved that Wang Chong's foresight had been correct. Even Zhang Shouji only truly understood what he was doing at the very last moment, when the 100,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate swarmed into the city. Those who lived high in the imperial court worried about the ruler. Those who lived far away from the Jiang who worried about the people. Zhang Shouji sensed the purest patriotism of the world from this young man, who still had the slightest hint of immaturity in his eyes and brows. To the Central Plains, to the Tang dynasty, this youth seemed to have a most intense and burning passion, a passion that Zhang Shouji had never felt from anyone else. Haha, Elder Zhang, there's no need to say more. All of this was forged by the two of us together. Without you, I would never have been able to accomplish all of this. Wang Chong said. The two looked at each other and smiled, saying no more. There were some things that the two were well aware of, so there was no need to say more. The appearance of Lion City was a miracle. Its appearance had changed the fate of the Southwest. This was something that no one could deny, whether it was now or in the future. More importantly, in this crisis, it had also firmly linked the two of them together. An invisible bond had linked Wang Chong and Zhang Shouji together. Chapter 553. Young Master. Young Master. Zhang Shouji was not the only one waiting at the base of the mountain. Zhang Shouji's disciples, apprentices, craftsmen who had worked on the construction of Lion City, overseers, merchants transporting materials, and soldiers were also present. Once Wang Chong and Zhang Shouji met, these people began to step forward and offer their greetings. Wang Chong also greeted them. Everyone has worked hard. It's no trouble at all. Not as hard as young master. That's right. Everyone says that young master was in the distant capital, but he already foresaw this war. That's why he sent us here. To be able to work for the Tang dynasty, for the Central Plains, is a great honor for us. That's right, young master. If there's anything you need from us, feel free to send it. This was the first time these people had seen Wang Chong, and all of them began to excitedly discuss the matter. In Lion City, Wang Chong was a legend, and as the war progressed, more and more events confirmed Wang Chong's prediction, and these rumors and legends became more and more prevalent. Just like everyone else, the craftsmen were also very curious about Wang Chong, the mastermind behind the construction of Lion City, and the crux of this war. When they heard that Wang Chong had also come to the southwest, the craftsmen had been in an uproar. Sitting behind the scenes in the distant capital, and controlling everything was completely different from personally coming to the southwest of the empire. Wang Chong gave a firm nod, and as he looked at the fervent gazes around him, he felt extremely gratified. Are you ready? After exchanging greetings, Wang Chong turned his head to Zhang Shouji. Lady Su has told me everything. Now that this was a serious matter, Zhang Shouji nodded, his expression turning serious. Everything has been delivered ahead of time, but I don't really understand these things, and will probably require young master's guidance. As he spoke, Zhang Shouji's expression became subtle. Zhang Shouji was a master in civil engineering, but he had never seen or heard of the things that Wang Chong had asked Su Qiqin to deliver. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Zhang Shouji wouldn't have believed that Wang Chong had such high attainments in civil engineering. That's not a problem at all. Looking at the look in Zhang Shouji's eyes, the prince certainly knew what he was thinking, but there was no need to explain these things. It was finally delivered in time. Deep in his heart, even Zhang Shouji did not notice that Wang Chong heaved a deep sigh of relief. With Su Qiqin's item delivered, Wang Chong's most important and crucial step was finally half completed. Where is it? Take me there. Wang Chong said. At the peak of the mountain, huge iron boxes were densely packed and neatly arranged. These iron boxes were all placed in a hidden place on the mountain, and they were all black. If one did not walk up close, one would not be able to see them from afar. As Wang Chong approached, he saw the insignia of the capital's swordsmithing families, sword shops, and swordsmiths on the boxes. And the most eye-catching of all the boxes was the capital's Wang family's insignia. They were indeed sent from the capital. Looking at the familiar insignia on the boxes, Wang Chong let out a long sigh of relief. This is only a small part of what Miss Su sent over. There are many more on the back of the mountain. Zhang Shouji said. Pack. Wang Chong nodded, and did not say anything else. He took out his long sword, inserted it into the gap of the box and pried it open. What is this? At this moment, the eagle, Su Shiping, Su Ansuan, and the others also rushed over. Looking at the strange-looking objects in the box, other than the eagle, who already knew what they were, everyone else revealed curious expressions. Even Wang Chang's father, Wang Yan, and Xin Yuzhongtong, who had rushed over from behind, revealed curious expressions. After the conclusion of the battle with Huashu Huaitsong, Wang Chong had practically traveled day and night, urging his soldiers to march 1,000 li to this place. But as for why he chose this place, no one knew. But regardless of the reason, at least one thing was certain. It definitely had something to do with these huge boxes on the mountain. These are our life-saving straws. As Wang Chong spoke, he suddenly reached into the iron box, grabbed a piece of steel, and threw it into the air. The steel piece flew into the air, flipped a few times, and then stabbed heavily into the ground motionless. As the storm clouds scattered and the sky gradually cleared, no one could describe what the Uzun army felt at this moment. It's finally over. Longkimba gazed at the gradually parting sky, mentally letting out a long sigh. This was just the most ordinary change in the weather, but in Longkimba's eyes, it seemed like 10,000 years had passed. Without the aid of the storm, I'd like to see where you can run. The dark clouds in the sky had still not scattered, but they had grown much thinner. It was still a long way from clear skies or good weather, but this was enough for Longkimba and the Uzun army. As long as there was no cover from the storm, the ambushes and assassinations of the Tang people would be completely useless. It was almost impossible for them to ambush, assassinate, and sneak attack them like they did last night. Longkimba drew back his gaze from the sky and saw that all the Uzun generals around him had the same expression on their faces. Haha, once I lead my army to catch up to you, I'll tear all of you to pieces. I'll vent the hatred in my heart. Longkimba's eyes were gloomy, his brow suffused with killing intent. In last night's battle, Longkimba had been ambushed by Wang Yan and Xin Yuzhongtong, the two highest commanders of the southwest of the Tang dynasty. If not for the timely arrival of the great general, he would have died. As a resident of the Great Snow Mountain Temple, Longkimba had always had an extremely high opinion of himself. How could he possibly endure such a humiliation? Boom! While Longkimba was in a daze, the earth suddenly quaked, and a majestic tornado of energy soared into the sky. A furious voice boomed over the camp like a peal of thunder. Bastard thing! You deserve to die. Whoosh! The air seemed to crazily surge, the majestic power contained in that voice throwing the air in a radius of several hundred zhang into chaos. Hearing Great General Huashu Wuzong's exposed voice, even Longkimba couldn't help but feel stifled, a hint of fear appearing on his face. Fortunately, it wasn't me who pursued Wang Yan's group yesterday. Longkimba inwardly rejoiced. At this moment, he suddenly rejoiced that he had followed the great general, and not been like the Zifadon Jiao Sero, pursuing Wang Yan with Fenjie, the crown prince of Mengshi Zhao. That bastard Jiao Sero actually lost nearly 50,000 soldiers in a single battle. Not even I would dare to make such a grave mistake. Given the great general's temper, he'll definitely skin him alive for daring to come back this morning. Longkimba quietly said to himself. Rumble! As if in response to Longkimba's voice, the distant commander's tent suddenly exploded, and a muscular figure smashed a large hole through it. Amidst cries of alarm, the figure was sent flying nearly 100 zhang into the air before crashing to the ground with a thud. That sound made everyone's hearts ache, and those who were even a little closer could even feel the violent tremors caused by the impact of that person's fall. But a few moments later, Jiao Sero used both his hands and feet to rush back into the tent like an eight-legged spider. It was like he hadn't been the one who had just fallen. General, Prime Minister, your subordinate has truly encountered a formidable opponent this time. Jiao Sero's pleas could be heard even from a distance. Longkimba's heart trembled, but he pretended not to hear and quickly walked away. The decisive battle with the Tang dynasty's Annam Protectorate was about to begin. Compared to Jiao Sero's misfortune, he was more concerned about exterminating the Tang dynasty and washing away his shame. By the time Longkimba had calmed his heart and was about to leave, in the distant tent, everything was just beginning. This massive tent was currently packed with people. Besides Huaxu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen, the two leaders of the Uzun Empire's Ngari royal lineage, there was also King Jelifeng of the Mengxi Zhao Empire and Great General Duan Gechuan. Jiao Sero had returned with the news of its defeat. Let alone Huaxu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen, even Jelifeng and Duan Gechuan were stunned. Cavalry had always been more powerful than infantry, and Uzun cavalry had swept through the world with few opponents. One could say that, although Mengxi Zhao had the largest army, the true main force had been Uzun's 200,000-some cavalry. Ever since the start of the war, the Uzun Empire had not suffered any major losses, a direct testament to its strength. Thus, one could easily imagine the shock that Jiao Sero's defeat had caused. 70,000 Taisang cavalry of almost 80,000 had returned with only 20,000 some. This was undoubtedly a crushing defeat. Since the start of the war, the Uzun Empire had never suffered such a loss. Prime Minister General, this truly wasn't our fault. Our brothers did all they could, but we were no match for them. None of our men could get close to their front lines, no matter which direction we came from. Our brothers have all participated in several major battles, and even the Anxi Protectorate army was so formidable that they were beaten down by us. But for some reason, those fellows are just too formidable. In the tent, Jiao Sero was far from the only one kneeling on the ground. The other commanders were there as well. One of the officers had barely said a few words when Huaxu Huizong furiously bellowed, "How dare you? Shut your mouth!" "My lord, I..." Before the Tibetan officer could say anything, rumble. An enormous energy, suffused with scorching heat, slammed into his body. Before this debating officer could finish speaking, Huaxu Huizong had sent him flying out of the tent with a palm. "At this stage, you've already lost, yet you still dare to argue with me." Huaxu Wuzong's face was ashen, his rage uncontrollable. "My lord." Everyone in the tent felt a chill in their hearts as they lowered their heads. The culture of Uzun was completely different from that of the Central Plains, and Huaxu Wuzong was no gentle Confucian general. If he continued to argue, nothing good would come of it. "Great General, although this is your Uzun's family, forgive this lowly one for speaking too much, but I have interacted with General Jiao Sero several times. This lowly one has always admired his bravery. Could it be that the Tang dynasty has sent a large number of reinforcements that we do not know about?" Just when the mood was extremely stifling, a voice came from the corner of the tent. It was King Jelifeng of Mengxi Zhao. Although this was Huaxu Wuzong's commander's tent, it had now become the tent of the Mengxi, Yusang army. The two sides had started a war against the Tang dynasty, and there was no way out. Given the Tang dynasty's past style, it was certain that they would retaliate on a large scale in the future. As an ally, the Uzun suffering such a large number of casualties was also closely related to Mengxi Zhao. It was impossible for her not to take this matter seriously. Impossible. Before Mengxi Zhao and Jelifeng could continue, Huaxu Wuzong immediately interrupted them. "The closest to us is Longyu. Geshu Han's Big Dipper army is extremely powerful and is the one most likely to reinforce this place. But right now, Longyu has King of Generals Witadra Konglo and Dusong Mengpoch. No matter how formidable Geshu Han is, he won't be able to free himself. And besides Geshu Han, where else can the Central Plains find usable soldiers?" Although he had a crude appearance that made him seem like a brute, Huaxu Wuzong had not relied solely on martial prowess to become a great general of the Ngari royal lineage and contend against Zhangqiu Jinxiong for so many years. It's hard to say. The dynasties of the Central Plains have extremely deep reserves, so it's possible that they have a trump card that we do not know about. Moreover, it was dark and raining at the time, so visibility was poor. Perhaps the Tang people had sent a large number of reinforcements that Jiao Sero and the others did not notice. This is also possible. A cold and hard voice suddenly said, "That's impossible. We were at the summit at the time. The main attack came from the summit. We couldn't have been wrong." A general under Jia Siluo's command raised his head and argued, "You still dare to talk back?" Huaxu Wuzong was infuriated. Uzun's hierarchy was even stricter than that of the Central Plains. Since he had already spoken, he would not allow anyone to disobey him, especially not in front of Jelifeng and the others. Great General, you've wronged them. Fenjie stood against the wall of the tent, looking at the Jiao Sero soldiers wounded by Huashu Wuzong. He wanted to say something several times, but then hesitated. With his father present and Huashu Wuzong teaching his subordinates a lesson, Fenjie should not have had any leeway to speak. But Fenjie had also participated in that battle. Of the Uzun generals, Fenjie had the best relationship with Jiao Sero. Otherwise, he would not have chased after Wang Yan and the others through the rain. Now that he saw Jiao Sero and his subordinates being punished, and Jiao Sero even heavily wounded by Huashu Wuzong, Fenjie couldn't help but step forward. The Tang dynasty truly did not have any reinforcements. The true cause of our defeat was that incomparably crafty Tang dynasty youth, who impersonated Wang Fu. I was there at the time, so I can guarantee that Jiao Sero's words are absolutely correct. His words were resolute and decisive, but as Fenjie spoke, Huashu Wuzong, Daluan Ruozhen, Jelifeng, and Duan Gutsuan all paled. What did you say? Chapter 554. What youth? Your Highness the Crown Prince, what are you saying? A solemn voice came from the side. In the tent, the only person in Mengshi Zhao who could interject at this time was the only great general of Mengshi Zhao, Duan Gutsuan. Although Mengshi Zhao's strength was far inferior to that of the Tang dynasty or Uzun, he was the only great general who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Geshu Han, Huashu Wuzong, and Zhangqiu Jinxiong. This was enough for Mengshi Zhao to squeeze into the ranks of the various kingdoms. And this wasn't even mentioning that the ruler of Mengshi Zhao, Jelifeng, was a top-class expert. This was also why the ruler of Mengshi Zhao was so ambitious and wanted to break free from the control of the Tang dynasty, even suppressing the Tang dynasty to become the hegemon of the southwest. The southwest only has Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan, and these two can only be considered brigadier generals. And where did this youth come from? Great General truly is a youth in his teens. He wore golden armor and pretended to be Wang Fu. Jiasilio and I were able to see this for ourselves. The army commanded by Wang Yan and Wang Fu was already surrounded by us and was at the end of its flight. But this brat seemed to have learned some sort of military art. Ever since he appeared, the Anxi Protectorate army seemed to have become a completely different army. It became extremely sharp and difficult to deal with. Our vanguard was already on the verge of piercing through them. But who could have expected that 10,000 of our men would be killed instead? It was precisely because Jiao Sero and I noticed this that we wanted to assassinate him. But we didn't know that although this brat's strength is insignificant, he's extremely crafty. Not even Jiao Sero and I were able to kill him. Feng Jia refuted. Although Great General Duan Gutsuan's reputation in the Central Plains wasn't that great, and not many people knew of him, within Mengshi Zhao, his word was law. Let alone Fenjie's father Jelifeng, even Uzun's great general Huashu Wuzong dreaded him. In the whole of Mengshi Zhao, other than his father Jelifeng, who was the king, Huashu Wuzong had to show some respect. Only General Duan Gutsuan's words could make him take it seriously. Great General Prime Minister Crown Prince Fenjie is correct. There was indeed a very powerful young man among the Tang people. Our cavalry's charge was very powerful, but I don't know how he did it. He actually made our army fall into chaos. Our own people blocked our own people, and we couldn't attack them at all. Although I don't want to admit it, in terms of the art of war, we are indeed far inferior to that youth. Jiao Sero opened his mouth as he lay on the ground. His head was pressed against the ground, and he didn't dare to move. In the tent, upon hearing Jiao Sero's words, Huashu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen immediately grew quiet. Jiao Sero was a general of Uzun. The people of Uzun were fierce and valiant, and as a result they were also proud. It wasn't that they wouldn't lower their heads, but that they would only lower their heads to their own people, to the people of Uzun who had a higher status than them. And not to outsiders. The people of Uzun would not easily submit to outsiders, much less a general of Uzun. In front of so many people, Jiao Sero, one of the 5 tiger generals, had actually personally admitted that his skill was inferior to someone else's. This wasn't something that could be easily done. This could only mean one thing. That fellow truly was very strong. Moreover, he was far more powerful than Jiao Sero. That was why he dared to say such words in public. On the other side, Jelifeng and Duan Gichuan also fell silent. If it could be said that Finjie's side of the story was only one side of the story, then Jiao Sero's testimony was enough to prove that they were speaking the truth. On the side of the Tang dynasty, in the Annam Protectorate, there was indeed an unknown young, but extremely powerful military strategist. For a moment, the tent was silent. The leaders of both sides were speechless. Jiao Sero, let me ask you. You said you've seen that young man. What does he look like? Huashu Wuzong suddenly said. A strange look flashed in his eyes. He seemed to have thought of something. This, Jiao Sero hesitated for a moment, then described Wang Chong's appearance. Guards, when the Tang people broke out of the encirclement yesterday, call over all the commanders in the northeast. Huashu Wuzong suddenly ordered. At these words, everyone turned to look at him, especially Finjie and Jiao Sero, their faces filled with amazement. Huashu Wuzong had never been the type to talk much. Since he had suddenly done this, there had to be a reason. Great General, have you discovered something? Jelifeng looked at Huashu Wuzong. If he remembered correctly, the army led by Huashu Wuzong had first been routed in the northeast yesterday, and it was from there that Xinyu Zhongtong and the others had broken out of the encirclement. I don't dare to say that I've discovered anything, but I have some vague ideas, Huashu Wuzong sternly said. A few moments later, a group of Uzun commanders who had been guarding the northeast last night and had been responsible for sniping Xinyu Zhongtong and the others immediately filed into the tent. Encircling Xinyu Zhongtong and the Annam Protectorate. You are all in charge of the northeast, right? Yes, my lord. They all spoke in hushed voices. Tell me everything you have observed about the Tang people's commanders. Forget about Xinyu Zhongtong and the others. Just talk about the unfamiliar Tang people's commanders. At Huashu Wuzong's words, everyone's expressions became strange. Great General, do you suspect that the people who routed you last night were the same people who defeated us? Also the work of that brat. Finjie blinked. Whether it's true or not, we'll know once we ask, Huashu Wuzong said. The final result came out faster than everyone had expected. After a month of fighting in Lion City, the Uzun commanders were now very familiar with the commanders of the Annam Protectorate. Moreover, the observation ability of a commander was far sharper than that of an ordinary soldier. In just a few moments, a youth who looked exactly like the one described by Jiao Sero and the others appeared in the mouths of the commanders. Just think about it. A group of veteran and extremely experienced generals of the Tang dynasty had a young, tender youth mixed in with them. Moreover, he was the one giving the orders. It was hard not to notice him. How is this possible? When the final answer was reached, everyone's expressions became both marvelous and strange. This was especially true for Finjie and Jiao Sero. Jiao Sero, who had been lying on the ground, couldn't help but jerk his head up, his eyelids twitching. This is impossible. They had only arrived in the morning and had been punished as soon as they arrived. They only knew that Great General Huashu Wuzong's operation had failed and that Xinyu Zhongtong had succeeded in escaping. But they had never imagined that the one who had defeated them and the Great General was the same youth. How could this fellow be so formidable? Are you sure you're not mistaken? How could that fellow defeat the Great General? When Huashu Wuzong was speaking to his subordinates, it was normally not his place to interrupt. But Finjie couldn't care less. Although Huashu Wuzong couldn't compare to the Uzun Great General Huitadra Konglo, nor could he compare to the Tang dynasty's Wang Zhongxi or Zhang Shogui, he wasn't too far off. This was not a matter of pure martial prowess. No one who could reach the Imperial Great General level had relied solely on their martial prowess. Wisdom and courage were the most basic requirements. Cavalry in the hands of Huashu Wuzong and Jiao Sero would never be the same. The cavalry led by Huashu Wuzong was an existence that could crush Zhangqiu Jinxiong's infantry. If even he had been defeated by that youth, then that youth's mastery of the art of war had reached an absurd level. No one in the Mengshi, Yusang army could defeat him. It's not really defeat. They just used the tactic of luring the tiger away from the mountain. Huoshi Wuzong indifferently said, his expression extremely calm. If he hadn't been lured away, Xingyu Zhongtong and the others would never have been able to so easily break out of the encirclement. However, even so, the ability that the other party displayed was already quite shocking. At the very least, if he hadn't appeared in time last night, the leader of the 5 tiger generals, Long Kimba, would already be dead. The sudden appearance of such a formidable figure on the southwestern battlefield was extremely bad news for the Mengshi, Yusang army. Even people of high status like Jelifeng and Duangichuan couldn't help but frown. To think that the Tang dynasty would produce such a formidable figure, and a young one at that. This is definitely not good news for our Mengshi Zhao and Uzun. For the first time, Jelifeng revealed a worried expression. In the War of the Southwest, Mengshi Zhao had staked the fate of his country on the line. There was no way out. At this stage of the war, there was no room for any variables. I know all the famed generals, great generals, and generals of the Tang dynasty like the back of my hand, as well as all the rising stars of the younger generation. My imperial palace has even set up a special archive for them. Anyone who can reach this level of mastery in the art of war is definitely no ordinary individual. But why have I never heard of such a person in the Tang dynasty? The appearance of such a person in the southwest is definitely a disaster, not a blessing. I only want to know, just what is the background of this youth? Why does your majesty need to boost the morale of others and diminish your own? General Huoshi Wuzong has already said that the opponent is only using the tactic of luring the tiger away from the mountain. Since he is using this method, he must believe that he is no match for the great general. Otherwise, why would he abandon what is near and seek what is far away? A voice came from the side. Compared to his own ruler, Great General Duangichuan's attitude was much calmer and more objective. As the only remaining great general of Mengshi Zhao, as well as the only great general, Duangichuan would not underestimate his opponent before understanding the details, but he would also not pointlessly overestimate him and strike a blow to his own morale. The great general speaks correctly. The Annam Protectorate is made up of infantry, with only a small number of cavalry. No matter what, he will never be able to escape. Imperial Father, Great General, Prime Minister, based on my and General Jiao Sero's personal experience, this youth will definitely be a great foe for our Mengshi Zhao and Uzun in the future. He's so young and already so formidable. If he matures in the future, won't he become a great threat to us? So no matter what, we can't let him escape. Fenjie's face was gloomy. That youth who had defeated him and Jiao Sero at the same time, and had even rescued Xinyu Zhongtong, and the Annam Protectorate from the hands of Uzun Great General Huoshi Wuzong. Fenjie's heart was seething with an intense killing intent. Not even he himself had noticed that for the first time, he had faintly begun to envy another person. As the crown prince of Mengshi Zhao, Fenjie had been a child of outstanding talent, and at a young age, he had been praised by the war god of the Tang dynasty, Wang Zhongxi, as a future great general. Even in the capital of the Tang dynasty, Fenjie had been one of the finest geniuses. There truly weren't many people in this world worthy of his envy. But at this moment, Fenjie was envious. An even younger and more outstanding youth meant limitless prospects, as well as an endless threat to Mengshi Zhao and Uzun. No matter what, he could not allow this youth to leave the southwest alive. In truth, there's no need to worry so much. As for that mysterious youth who defeated all of you last night, I pretty much know his background. Suddenly, there was a burst of hearty laughter. The silent prime minister of the Uzun Gari royal lineage, Daloan Ruozan, narrowed his eyes and lightly waved a feather fan in his hand. Buzz! Chapter 555. The appearance of a mysterious youth had caused the war in the southwest to undergo an earth-shaking change. The Uzun army, which had initially been virtually invincible, suffered successive defeats in the span of a single night, losing 50 to 60,000 soldiers. One had to admit that while everyone had been excitedly thinking about completely wiping out the Annam Protectorate and flattening the Tang dynasty's western front, this had given them all a rude awakening. No one knew the origins of this mysterious youth. Even Jiao Sero and Finjie had only met him once. But now, Uzun Prime Minister, who had never even seen him, or even participated in any of the battles, was saying that he already knew the identity of this youth. Prime Minister, is what you say true? Finjie's face was filled with shock. He had heard of this Prime Minister of the Uzun Ngari royal lineage for a long time, only knowing that this youth possessed extraordinary intelligence and abilities. The punishment operation that the Tang dynasty had jointly launched with Zhangzhou Jianxiong and several other prefectures had ultimately ended in failure because of this youth. Finjie didn't understand Daluan Ruozhen, but he understood the other side. No, the capital's Zhangzhou Jianxiong. Zhangzhou Jianxiong was a man of great ambition. He had always wanted to establish himself in the southwest and use his achievements to enter the imperial court. Moreover, under Zhangzhou Jianxiong's leadership, the relationship between the Tang dynasty and Mengshi Zhao had not been so stiff, and the two sides had even had a honeymoon period. Back then, Zhangzhou Jianxiong had also encouraged Mengshi Zhao to borrow Mengshi Zhao's military strength to ally with the two sides and attack the plateau. But in the end, none of these operations had succeeded. It was not Uzun Great General Huishu Wuzong, but this Prime Minister of the Uzun Empire's Ngari royal lineage, who had managed to make someone as ambitious as Zhangzhou Jianxiong settle down in the Annam Protectorate for several decades. But this Uzun Empire's Ngari royal lineage. I've long heard that the Prime Minister of Uzun has 9 acupores in his mind and is extraordinarily intelligent. Each of them is knowledgeable. They are familiar with all the classics of the Central Plains and have also received the secret incantation from the mysterious Great Snow Mountain Temple. The cicada feels the autumn wind before it blows and knows the meaning of autumn when a leaf falls. I used to think that it was more or less an exaggeration. If this Daluan Ruozhen can determine that kid's identity just by listening to a few words, then it's really scary. Feng Jie's eyes flashed and countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Uzun had 4 royal families, 4 prime minister, and 1 prime minister. Daluan Ruozhen was just one of them. If Daluan Ruozhen really had this kind of ability, then the other 3 prime ministers, and the one who served the Tsimpo were truly frightening. At this moment, a hint of fear emerged in Finjie's heart. Imperial Father borrowed the strength of Uzun to deal with the Tang dynasty. But Uzun himself is a wolf, and an extremely vicious one at that. If in the future Mengshi Zhao and Uzun shed all pretense of cordiality, the empire would be in dire straits. In truth, Feng Jie had always been reserved about borrowing the strength of the Uzun Empire to make it difficult for the Uzun cavalry to advance. Although he couldn't be considered to be vehemently opposed, he wasn't very enthusiastic either. At the very least, he was a little conflicted. The more powerful Uzun's general and minister abilities were, the more conflicted Feng Jie felt. Haha, Crown Prince Jie, what do you think? At some point, Daluan Ruozhen had walked over and was looking at Feng Jie with a smirk on his face that seemed to contain a deeper meaning. It's nothing. Prime Minister is overthinking things. Feng Jie's heart chilled, and he hastily regained his composure. He knew that this Prime Minister was extremely perceptive, and that his thoughts were even more terrifying than he had imagined. That brat's origins are unknown. If we can learn his identity and use his weakness to deal with him, that would be the best. Feng Jie is willing to listen to Prime Minister's wise opinion. In truth, this isn't that difficult. Although I've never seen the youth you speak of, nor have I participated in any of those campaigns, I don't know how he commands an army. However, if we just want to determine his identity, it really isn't that difficult. I already know everything about him. Daluan Ruozhen fanned himself as he paced back and forth, attracting everyone's attention. When it came to military affairs, one was civil, and the other was military. Wherever Huishu Wuzong was present, he rarely interfered. Most of the time, it was a matter of strategy. The art of war and strategy are all secrets of the families of ministers and generals. These are not things that an ordinary outsider can learn. Moreover, you said that he was wearing Wang Fu's armor. At this point, Dalawan Ruozan smiled and continued. There are only two true commanders of the Annam Protectorate that Wang Yin leads. One is Wang Yan, and the other is his eldest son Wang Fu. These two are the true commanders of the army. Military affairs are a matter of great importance to the country. Which ordinary soldier would dare to casually pass on the armor of their commander? They wouldn't even dare to think about it. As soon as that youngster appeared, he took the king's talisman and wore his armor. If he wasn't from an illustrious family, rich or noble and full of confidence, how would he dare to do such a thing? Prime Minister, forgive me for speaking too much, but the Tang dynasty has countless scions who are either rich or noble. If this is all, I'm afraid that it isn't enough to deduce the identity of that youth, right? Jelifeng, the ruler of Mengshi Zhao, said with a frown. In truth, she was also rather curious about that youth. However, this curiosity wasn't admiration. Rather, it was a desire to eliminate any threat as quickly as possible. The Tang dynasty of the Central Plains had far too many talents, practically innumerable. Wang Zhongxi Geshu Han, Gao Xinji, Zhang Shougui, Zhangqiu Jinxiong, Wang Yan Xinyu Zhongtong. There were far too many. And now, at such a crucial moment, there was another mysterious youth who was extremely skilled in the art of war. With such a powerful empire by their side, it was hard to eat or sleep. No one knew when the Tang dynasty would be dissatisfied and send troops to destroy Mengshi Zhao, or change the dynasty and install a new emperor. This was also one of the reasons why Jelifeng wanted to rebel against Tang. As for the dangers from the Tang dynasty, especially those that could be seen, he wanted to nip every single one of them in the bud as soon as possible, lest it grow into a bigger problem. Haha, if that's all, of course it wouldn't be enough. Dalawan Ruozan chuckled. But Huashu Wuzong also said that the commanders of the army last night were not Wang Yan or Xinyu Zhongtong. It was not their style to work together to launch a sneak attack on Jiao Sero. To be able to command both Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong at the same time. Just think about it. Who else could do that? Everyone fell silent. Huashu Wuzong and Jelifeng both sank into deep thought. None of them had considered what Dalawan Ruozan had just said. Even Fenjie and Jiao Sero were dumbfounded. In fact, in terms of curiosity, in terms of wanting to know more about that young man, no one was more eager than them, who had been defeated by him twice. But they really hadn't thought about what Dalawan Ruozan had said. Wang Yan is still secondary, but Xinyu Zhongtong is someone that fellow Zhangqiu Jinxiong chose. That fellow only looks at loyalty. Wang Yan might hand over his military authority, but Xinyu Zhongtong definitely won't hand over his authority so easily. Unless, Wang. It was as if a beam of light had flashed through everyone's mind, and their minds suddenly became clear. Unless that person was appointed by Zhangqiu Jinxiong. In that instant, the same thought flashed through everyone's mind. That's right. Why would Xinyu Zhongtong hand over his authority in such a short period of time? And why would he listen to that youth and work together with Wang Yan to ambush Jiao Sero? In this world, it's not that there aren't people who can order Xinyu Zhongtong around and make him humble himself. But there are definitely only a handful of them. And Zhangqiu Jinxiong is definitely one of them. I dare say that that child definitely has a letter from Zhangqiu Jinxiong. Dalawan Ruozan waved his fan, his last words resolute and decisive. As soon as he finished speaking, the room became deathly silent. At this moment, even the emperor of Mengshi Zhao, Jelifeng, was speechless. Dalawan Ruozan had never even met the other party, but from a few words alone, he had deduced that the other party had a letter from Zhangqiu Jinxiong. And yet, even Jelifeng felt that what he had said was probably true. But how could Zhangqiu Jinxiong hand over his letter to someone else? That fellow has a suspicious personality, and would never easily hand over his authority to someone else. On top of that, given how formidable the other party is, to be able to force Zhangqiu Jinxiong to hand over the letter to him, how could we have never heard of him before? Ha ha ha, this is where things get interesting. A bright light shone in Dalawan Ruozan's eyes. In his view, There were no longer any variables that could change the outcome of the war in the southwest. Last night's battle had only been a coincidence. The torrential rain, the darkness of the night, and the fact that the Mengshi Yusang army had not arrived at the same time had resulted in this outcome. But in the end, the fate of the Annam Protectorate had already been decided from the very start. What he was interested in now was this mysterious young man who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Who says that we haven't heard of him? It's just that your majesty might not know of him. Of course, Zhangqiu Jinxiong wouldn't hand over his letter to someone else, let alone have Xinyu Zhongtong voluntarily hand over his authority. But if it's someone who's close to Zhangqiu Jinxiong and has the same interests, then there's no problem. For example, the Wang clan, or Wang Yan's youngest son, or the person who built Lion City. Boom! Dalawan Ruozen's final verdict was like a stone stirring 1,000 ripples. Everyone felt as if a fierce gale had swept through them, their minds raging with great waves. Even Huashu Wuzong's heart was in turmoil. Not many people knew about the youngest son of the Wang clan, but the person who had built Lion City and given Mengshi Zhao and Uzan such a difficult problem had already become a household name. Fin Jie and Jiao Sero, who had already met Wang Chong, were even more shocked than anyone else. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.